scored. Touchdown, Rebels!
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
Nussmeier looking for Thomas. He's got him. Touchdown, LSU!
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
Texas back in Bama territory. Ewers from the pocket. Now he'll loft one downfield. A ton of air running underneath it. Worthy's got it for a touchdown.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
Arnold, tempo, back corner, off the Cam, touchdown, Jaden Gibson.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
First play, second quarter, touchdown Tennessee!
365 Sports is turbocharged by Unite Private Networks. Find out more at uniteprivatenetworks.com.
Cook pumps, throws, Burden in space. That's where you want him to get the football, and he takes it to the house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
All right, here we go, a new week. College football barreling down towards the start of practices in August. Media days this week, including up in Dallas at the Omni, SEC. Greg Sankey spoke, and, of course, others, 4 coaches per day, all the way up until Thursday. We'll have a lot on that today. And then also Jason Scheer with a little nugget about the possibility, or at least after crossing 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 hurdles, what might still be on the horizon for FSU, Clemson, and what happens there. I'm still very leery of any of that, and we'll discuss that as we've done, almost to the point of ad nauseum. But when he mentioned it with his kind of connections, and I spoke with him earlier on the phone, we'll get to that in just a moment. All right, Matt Brown today, perfect timing at 3:30. The EA Sports 25, is it like the preview version that's out?
No, this is the if you paid a little extra, you get the early release version.
The early, okay, that like a sneak peek. He's going to join us today at 3:30, and of course the full release coming up later in the week. Carter Yates from Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. He's at SEC Media Days. George Teague, former Alabama and NFL star. Taz Williams, who committed to Baylor from Red Oak High School, is a part of our list today. And also the Associated Press, Ralph Russo, and Paul's Top 5. All right, so here's a quote from Greg Sankey from earlier today on the SEC, saying that 16 strong, or from 14 deep to 16 strong, 16 is our today and our tomorrow. Mentioned the universities, the influence, the collective, enrollment, nearly 500 million students, a global network of nearly 5 million alums and former students to set the scene as he talks about 14 deep, which was a great conference, to 16 strong with the additions of today inside Media Day of Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't say anything about the day after tomorrow or next week. You know, like that's I think, a very good way to put it, because there's nothing officially in the water and there's nothing they can even talk about, which is why the SEC, like, nobody's saying, well, yeah, sure, we'd love to have this, right now. So, but yeah, I mean, they are the premier conference, and the Big Ten technically makes more money per year, when it comes down to their network and all. But the bottom line is that the premier conference in college football is the SEC. They've won the most national titles. They've got the biggest concentration of premier brands in it now because of Texas and Oklahoma. So, I mean, he's not wrong about any of that stuff.
Yeah, 500,000 students, not 500 million. If it was 500 million, then I think their TV ratings would be a lot higher. That'd be
University of China.
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah, 500,000 students, just to be clear, because the other one would be, I don't think anybody could ever possibly catch up to that, and they would be messing with the NFL more so than the Big Ten. But yeah, I think that's just a generic statement by commissioner whose conference is in the spotlight today. They are 16 strong now. They've been counting that down for 2 years. It's exciting times for them to introduce Oklahoma and Texas and to have them officially a part of their events. 4-day media days. I'm glad we didn't have that last week. I much preferred having 8 teams on both days as opposed to spreading it out and covering nearly an entire work week. But I'm sure they're going to have a lot of fun, and have already started to have a lot of fun in Dallas. And, yeah, they're 16 strong. They sat back last week like everybody else and watched the Big 12, peacock around and do their thing, talking about how great they are. And now it's the SEC's turn, and I'm very interested in how the rest of the conferences go about doing that as well. But, yeah, this is a big year for Greg Sankey and company, and I think that they are focused on that, even though a lot of the noise in college football seems to be focused on all of these other things that we're inevitably going to be talking about as well. There's a lot of the outside noise. But for the SEC, hey, they're in a good spot. And so, I know he's got to be and has been today a bit more careful with his words and not so much talking about the what-ifs or the futures and things like that, but instead just talking about the present. And you know what? Their present's pretty good because Oklahoma and Texas are in the league now, and this is the start of that. All
right, so there we are with that. And of course, it's something's been building for, since July of 2021 when Texas and Oklahoma announced that they would be joining the SEC. Now, we have made it clear that, the realignment buzz that's always out there, whether innuendos or speculation or whatever, we have a great deal of respect for Jason Scheer from Arizona Wildcat Authority, and I saw this nugget from him. According to sources, there's an internal belief in the Big 12 that Florida State and Clemson are likely to join the conference within the next year or so. Now, that timeline is very wide open. At the same time, I spoke with Jason on the phone because I was like, Jason, what are you hearing here? And he couldn't be on today. His father's having like a heart, not operation, but going to a doctor about his heart. And so I said, we'll get Jason on tomorrow. There's nothing tied up here. There's lawsuits to still be done. But when Jason Scheer put this out, then I kind of double-taked and said, okay, maybe he's hearing some things that are legitimate.
Yeah, I mean, look, we said last week that, here's Florida State and Clemson's plan. Plan A is Big Ten or SEC. That's plan A. That's not on the table yet. Plan B is getting the ESPN to cancel that contract because they broke up the league, and then reforming an ACC that makes more money with less teams in it than there is now. And plan C would be the Big 12, but there are so many factors that go into that to say that anything is close to imminent, and even next year to me means imminent, that look, they haven't even decided where they're legally going to decide how much money or what rights everybody has yet, because every state that has ruled on it says that, yes, there's jurisdiction in the state for this. So there's 3 different lawsuits going on. They don't know, most importantly, how much they're going to have to pay yet. And nothing can happen until Clemson and Florida State and the ACC come to some sort of agreement on what their overall money is going to be. So outside of those things and many others happening, I just don't see things being imminent. I'm not saying the Big 12 is impossible, but also Florida State and Clemson are doing this to make $80 to $90 million. That is not possible in the Big 12 without a lot of concessions, and they're already going to be paying out fees anyway. So I'm not sure where the Big 12 gets them to 80 to 90 million in a similar time frame that they want to. That's where I get lost.
Yeah, it was very interesting to see him drop that, because you're right, it does make you double take a bit more than some of the other things that are just you can feel is a lot of straw grasping, or just like throw it out, boom, I was right on this. Like there's a lot of noise is my point, and especially when it comes to the realignment phase, and there's all sorts of talk about this Florida State Clemson deal, and there has been now for going on a year, and I think that's going to continue on. And so to see Jason kind of cut through all that, because he is somebody who people obviously hold a different sort of a weight and respect for because of the Arizona reporting, then yeah, that strikes a little bit different than somebody who they do that all the time, and it's like if it's right, then you hear about it, but if it's wrong, we just move past to the next thing, right? And so he's not one of those guys. He's not somebody that's just throwing stuff out there, whether that's backed by legitimate information or not. It's just it can get kind of noisy, and you don't know what to believe after a while. And so for him to just come out of seemingly nowhere and put that in front of everybody on Twitter was like, whoa, wait a second, what is that about? For sure. It definitely made, I think, everybody pause a little bit. And it's just so interesting, man, because there's just definitely this portion of Big 12 fans that are trolling a great deal, like really trolling the hell out of the ACC, much like they did the Pac. And it's just funny to see them actually be given like a little bit of real power, because there's actually other people now, instead of it just being trolling or wish casting or, making up stuff, to troll or whatever, or even believing a little morsel that like, yeah, this could eventually happen. Here comes somebody who gives them like this gift of like real, like potential sourced info. And it's like, man, we might have been kind of talking out of our butt before, but now, like, holy cow, there might really be something to this. And I think that's what happened this weekend, was a bunch of the talk suddenly feels like it was maybe, like confirmed, if you will, or given a boost because, well, here's this guy who's not just going to say something, like he's saying that it's possible. So now it's taking on this whole new life of like, oh my God, they really are coming. It's not like trolling, this fan base or just hoping that it could happen. It's like, wait, there's actually something to this. And that's the feel I got this weekend. I don't know about you guys, of like this real belief that this is a possibility.
Well,
now.
It is a possibility. It is because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But there's so many different A, B, C, D boxes to check. And Jason Scheer, despite being hammered by many who covered the Pac-12 during all that went down in 2022 or 3, stood his ground. Yeah. Told everybody who his sources, not who they were, but stood his ground. He was butchered for it, and in the end, he was completely right.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that he'll be completely right on everything, but I also know that and we know they were the last person, he and his wife, that I said bye to at Media Days the other day. Yeah, that stopped right as we were leaving because I hadn't had a chance to talk to them. So those were the last people I talked to at Allegiant Stadium, and I'm glad I got to say hello, but yeah, he's not throwing it out there for no reason. I think there are people that do because it's a popular thing to talk about and just speculate on. But like, he's not. Let's just throw speculation out there and just do it recklessly. So I think that's what's super of interest. And again, that's what I think kind of validates what a lot of people are feeling like. Oh, whoa! Like maybe there is something to this more than just a bunch of people on TCU, message boards trolling, because I know that there was a few of those guys. And so on and so forth. So that was kind of my immediate thing. I was like, oh, wow, this takes a turn now simply because he puts that out there. But I do think, much like with the Ross Dellinger interview, John Kurtz did a great job with that, and they got a lot of traction. But if you listen to Ross as I did, then he was very particular about saying, like, yeah, sure, it's a possible. But he wasn't, like, saying it's happening. He was saying, like, yeah, if this doesn't happen, then sure, there's a possibility that the ACC teams could look at the Big 12. And if you look at Jason's tweet past this one, I was surprised at just how matter of fact it was, of like, there's an internal belief that FSU and Clemson are likely to join the conference in the next year or so. I don't doubt that he's hearing that. I don't doubt that he has legit sources, but just to kind of put it in a time frame like that, I think also makes it sound a little bit different and adds a little bit of urgency to it. But he also goes on to say in multiple follow-up tweets, this is not imminent. This is not happening right now. There are a lot of things that have to happen to get to this point. But all it does is it gives you that little bit of like, it's possible. It's not zero. It's maybe 10 or 15, but it's not zero. But there is a long way to go, and he himself is the one that said that.
Yeah, and look, I do think that the process, Florida State and Clemson, and probably North Carolina, and maybe others, will have an opportunity once they know how much they're going to pay to legitimately pitch themselves to the other three conferences, which right now they don't have, because the conferences have no, like, if the Big Ten wants to call up Fox and NBC and everybody and say, okay, how much can you add for these schools? And the SEC wants to call up ESPN and go, how much can you add for these schools? And the schools have to get together and find out how much that they have to pay out. Like, they're going to have to find the best deal for them with they're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for several years to the ACC, no matter what happens. So until those things happen and we know a number, I wouldn't say I'm not forecasting them to any league over the other, although I would say the Big 12 would be third on their personal choice list.
Just on theirs or yours?
I'll say this. I'll say this definitively. This is the last time I'm going to say it. I don't care where they wind up as long as they win conference titles and get in the playoff. That's all I care about. If they wind up here, it's great for me. I can just
no. As long as you're relevant and you have a chance to win a national title.
I honestly don't care. Yeah. Like, the SEC, Big Ten, whatever. Like, there's pluses and minuses to all of it, and all of them cancel out, in my opinion. But for them, they're not doing this to wind up in the Big 12. They want to be in the SEC because they know if they're in the SEC or the Big 10, then they're going to make $80 to $90 million for sure. They know that. That's what they want. Is that what they're going to get? Well, that's not what everything happens. But I don't think it's really realistic to talk about it until there's a potential bidding process on these two massive media brands.
No, even before then.
Yeah.
Until they know how much they have to pay to get out.
Like until that happens.
Yeah, and I think I said this with John and Ross's interview the other day. I absolutely believe that Florida State and Clemson are talking to the Big 12. I think they're talking to the SEC. I think they're talking to the Big 10. I think every other league or every other conference member in that ACC league that has an opportunity to talk to people outside, I fully believe they're talking. And that's kind of the reports we've heard of, like, the Big 12 is talking with these teams. Yeah, I absolutely believe that. Just like I believe that they were talking to Pac-12 teams even when people said they weren't doing that. Now, does that mean anything in the long run? No. Does that guarantee they're getting any of those teams? No. But I do think Brett Yormark came out swinging last week. I think them going first set a tone that now if you're the ACC, you have to talk about this. You probably had to either way, but now you really have to talk about this because he ratcheted things up a bit, right? And now Greg Sankey's getting questions at Media Day about this because what's everybody talking about? Everybody's talking about Brett Yormark last week, and then now what that's led into with Jason Scheer's tweet and just all the noise out there. A lot of that got ramped up last week with Yormark being his typical aggressive self and being open for business, and then everybody kind of following along with those comments and trying to predict the next move. So he was able to stir the pot. I think that was calculated. They can sit back now. Media Day's behind them. Take a deep breath and watch how the next couple of weeks go and who says what and how they approach it. And Greg Sankey said some things today in regards to all this. And I think it was a masterful job of stirring the pot, just like it was when the Pac-12 was going through their issues. Now, does it end up the same? I don't know, but I do feel great about where the Big 12 is going to land ultimately. And whether that's a Florida State-Clemson package in 2.5 years from now, or if it's, Vatek and Louisville and, some combination in 4 years from now. Either way, I like the Big 12's leadership. I like that they're kind of the aggressor, and I don't believe every single thing that's coming across like this being imminent. But I do think that the more that you kind of keep people out there on their toes and keep them doubting and keep them wondering that there's areas to make some moves.
Well, also, if you're Brett Yormark, the two that are complaining right now and are suing, those are the ones that are publicly unhappy. But if your goal is to ultimately just get some of the bigger brands from the ACC, regardless of it wind up being if FSU and Clemson don't go, but if you get Louisville, if you get Pitt, and you can create those rivalries, if you get Vatek or something like that, then also worth it in that regard. Because
are any of those teams going to bring in more money?
Well, here's the thing. Question. Like that's why this is a fun topic because I know we got other stuff, but like you literally could go like I know, but it's actually fun because you can talk about it for like a million different from a million different standpoints. But yeah, that's the question that nobody takes into account when they start saying like let's add 6 teams, and it's like, all right, y'all know the Big 12 schools that are in the Big 12 actually want to make money at some point, right? Like they pushed off money this year to welcome in the new 4.
Yep.
So are they just going to keep doing that? And not only that, are they going to do that and then give not just some of their money away to bring in more schools, which they don't have a guarantee they'll ever see back, but they're not just going to give money away. In one instance of this happening, if you really wanted to swing for the fences and let's pretend, which I don't believe that the SEC and Big Ten aren't interested in Florida State and Clemson. I don't believe that. I'm just going to say it right now. I don't believe that. But and you're going to pay them what? Texas, Oklahoma type money? To come in, you're going to pay them like double or whatever so that they feel like they're at that mark that they need to be at. So when is everybody else going to make some dadgum money?
No.
Right.
There's absolutely no way that any of the current Big 12 teams, with who they are now, are going to give Florida State and Clemson more of the pie than that they're making.
Right. So that's private.
You just can't do that.
Right. So that's private equity, and that's what that would be. And like, so that's just where I think a lot of the questions are. I trust Jason Shear's reporting. I, for one, am not banking on Florida State and Clemson being in the Big 12 anytime soon. I think there's leveraging. I think there's posturing. I think there's a lot of stuff still up that's just to be determined. I absolutely believe the Big 12 is talking to them and doing everything they possibly can to make that happen. And if that can't happen, they've got a nice option B.
When I asked Brett Yormark last week, are you talking to anyone specifically outside of the Big 12? And he hesitated, remember?
Right.
He doesn't have to be the one making those calls.
Look, everybody's talking to everybody.
Yeah.
Let's just settle on that. Everybody's talking to everybody. So I absolutely believe conversations going on, but do I believe, based on everything going on right now, that anything is imminent in this regard? No, because there's just too many unanswered questions from the Florida State Clemson side and also from the Big 12 side. So, I mean, it's a very interesting week to head into after all the noise over the weekend. But like I said, I guess more than anything else, I'm not all in on these moves happening right now, but I do think the Big 12 has set itself up and cast its web, if you will. Yormark's thrown his web out there to potentially, catch some things over time, not necessarily in the next month or, even 6 months, but over time, if they play their cards right, they are in a very good spot, much like we said last week, and who would have ever thought that based on a couple of years ago?
Here's Greg Sankey. He was asked about whether or not he's paying attention to the ACC. I pay attention. We are focused on R16. I've said before that I'm not a recruiter. I'm not going to entangle the SEC in litigation.
Yeah. So basically he's saying,
I'm not Brett Yormark.
if they're free agents, this is a different story.
Yes.
And where it comes
into, he's not the one who's the recruiter. That doesn't mean they're not calling him.
Yeah. But to Craig's point of, he doesn't believe that the Big Ten and the SEC are not interested in them. That's what you say, so you're not entangled in litigation.
Right.
Because if he came out and was like, yeah, we'd love it. But you're telling me that a guy who just made happen Texas and Texas A&M back again as a rivalry in his league, a giant television number that's going to get.
Oh, yeah.
Texas and Oklahoma, a giant television number in the Big 12 is going to be probably bigger in the SEC, mostly because the television partner will promote it more. Not because the game has changed in any way, shape, or form. It's still what it was. That you couldn't get Clemson and South Carolina, which is a bitter rivalry, even though lopsided, and Florida State, which is one of the top 10 in the country in your league, and you're not interested in that number?
You have arguably the best rivalries other than like Michigan, Ohio State, basically in your cupboard. If you were to add like Florida State to that mix, when you just added Oklahoma and Texas, and I know there's probably a couple that I'm not thinking about. I'm not, doing it intentionally. Just in general, I can't believe you wouldn't want to fill your cupboard with more goodies like that. Oh, we already have this type of treat. Well, wouldn't you like the one with mint in it, or caramel or whatever? Like that's. I hear all this, well, there's not really an appetite for it. I don't think there's an appetite for it because it's not time for them to say they're hungry. It's not dinner time for the SEC yet. They don't have to be proactive. They can sit back and just let this unfold and let the litigation and all of that happen. They don't have to do a Brett Yormark and try to cut to the front of the line or create any sort of disturbances. They know who they are and where their power lies, and so – yeah, I don't believe that Greg Sankey has the ability to say much today, and so that's vague, and I would only expect vague in that regard, but if the time were to come where he could actually speak more openly or the opportunities are really there, I think he would sing a different tune. I absolutely do.
All right, that's a great discussion, because when Jason Shear popped it out there, I knew we had to get into it. Let's get into a couple other things. This is breaking news on Jeff Tedford, the head coach at Fresno State, announcing that he's resigning. He is no longer the head coach at Fresno State. He has announced his retirement or his resignation. This is like right up until the time that the season is about to start, and allow someone else to lead the program. This is very late in the mix. Now, I don't know about whether or not there's any kind of health issues or whatever, which is what he said, but at the same time, he's got to take care of himself and his family. Fresno State has to find a replacement.
Well, it's absolutely health issues. That's exactly what he cited. He said, with sad emotions following my recent medical checkup, it is clear that due to health concerns, my family and I have made the decision to step aside as Fresno State's head coach and allow someone else to lead the football program. So he was back for a second go-round. about to enter year 3 of the part 2 at Fresno State. And he was, in this position back in 2019 where he had to step down due to health reasons. So, yeah, awfully close to the season kicking off. Yeah, that's just tough. I hope he's okay. But obviously it's very scary when you got to step away from a job and you haven't done it just one time. This wasn't like, this was your first rodeo. It's like you've had to do this before. So, yeah, he came back, and y'all know who he replaced, right? Kalen DeBoer at Fresno State, who's had a little journey since these last couple of years, over these last couple of years. But, yeah, I mean, really great coach. Hate when things are out of people's control like this. So hopefully he's able to rest up and stay healthy, get healthy, whatever the case may be. But, yeah, very abrupt and sad news there for Jeff Tedford and for Fresno State. All
right, here's a couple of other stories from the SEC. We do have a couple of back-to-back guests with Matt Brown and then also Carter Yates in this next couple of segments. But Nick Saban, here's Nick Saban when asked about Big 12 and Texas and Oklahoma, specifically Texas.
That's always the challenge in the SEC. What kind of tickles me is all these people asking these questions about how Texas always ran the conference they were in. They're not going to run the SEC. There's a whole lot of arrogant people in a lot of places in the SEC, so they can forget all about that. They'll be a good team and a great program, and Sark will do a great job, but that's not going to be a problem.
All right, the fact that there are still people who feel like Texas ran the Big 12 is one thing. We know the power.
I think there's two ways of looking at that. Ran as in on the field, ran as in off the field.
No, off the
and
field,
I think people are
doubt.
talking about off the field, not on the field. Yeah.
And so Saban with that response, who just lost to Texas back in September of a year ago.
I sure hope that's the case, though. I sure hope that when they try to, make a move, because they inevitably will, and that's a credit to them. That's not a diss or a knock in any way. It's a credit to how they can scheme and find themselves making moves. And, that's something that I don't know what would really be out there for them at this point, like what power grab they could have. So maybe there's nothing. Maybe it's just quiet for a while. But I do hope if they try to pull some of the throw your weight around type moves that there is a response that is heavy from an Alabama, Georgia, Florida contingent of teams. We'll see, though, because we've seen how it works with the Nebraska, Oklahoma, A&M, Missouri, if you want to throw them in there. We know how that worked over time. I know the SEC's better ran and on a much different foundation, but I do hope that there is pushback, and I expect that there will be.
All right. You would think so. If it's best for the conference, then everybody should do it. Nick Saban was denied today getting into what was basically Radio Row and where they have the television setups, just no different than what we saw in Vegas. There's a lot more people there. He's now a media member, denied access into what was the area where you have to have a credential because he's never had to have a credential. So now that's reality. Nick Saban kind of laughed about it. Greg Sankey brought it up in his opening comments too.
Media, man, you gotta do. It's some of the media rules are you gotta have use your press pass. I made the mistake last year of we had too much of a butting up of our pregame show and kickoff time where like that 30 minutes doesn't really allow you to do much, even though it's a mile away. So I'm walking in at kickoff now every single time. And last year, pouring down rain. Had no umbrella. That's my bad for not planning right. And soaking wet, got all the way, like the mile walk that it takes once you park your car, only to dump my soaking wet bag on the metal detector table and then have to go, where's your credential? And and had to walk all the way back in the soaking rain. I mean, I didn't have a dry part on my body. But, yeah, you got to have your credential, man. And you know what? I'm glad they stopped me because if they said, hey, we know you, come on in, it would make me wonder of like, in other situations, you let that person through. So, yeah, you got to have your credential even if you're Nick Saban.
Yeah, I've had it where I forgot it, and they gave me a temporary, like Brent Ingram or whoever it was, but I've never been able to get in without the credential no longer how long we've been covering Baylor.
Makes me feel better about us not getting credentialed. At least they just wouldn't let Nick Saban walk in.
Yeah.
I don't know. After last week, I'm kind of glad we're not there, man. That turnaround would have been hell, baby.
I wouldn't have minded a couple of days, though, on Wednesday and Thursday.
I probably wouldn't have wanted to do 4 days.
Matt Brown from Extra Points is next on the EA Sports. He has been salivating for this, his thoughts about what he's already expecting. And then also Carter Yates He's at SEC Media Days. His thoughts about what he's heard or seen. This is 365 Sports.
It's the heat of summer, but the real heat is what you're cooking on the grill, smoker or oven. Waco Custom Marketplace can be your go-to playmaker for summertime grilling. You can't go out and eat? Be your own chef. Custom ordered, cut ribeyes, fillets, New York strips. Focus on high-quality beef at a competitive price. Waco Custom Marketplace has fresh deli cuts with sliced turkey, ham, pepperoni, or corned beef. Fresh seafood, salmon, shrimp, mahi-mahi, live lobsters, and great price chicken products, whole birds, tenders, chicken breast, and wings. Smoked items unique to Waco, house-made bacon, summer sausage, boudin, hot links, and German sausage. Every seasoning for every meal or occasion, grilling, baking, or frying. Your hometown grocery store with canned goods, pastas, fresh baked bread, buns and chips, sauce, condiments to pickles, charcoal, and lighter fluid, cold beer and wine. The best kolaches in Waco, mouth-watering cinnamon rolls, here for you in the community, helping avoid the long lines and crowded stores. Serving quality local products to the Waco community and beyond. Go online for more of the weekly values on their Facebook page. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Make this the summer of Ram at Allen Samuels in Waco. Drive home in a 2025 Ram 1500 Lone Star for just 2.9% for 72 months, with no payments for 90 days. Plus, first responders get an extra $500 off at Allen Samuels.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Parenting is full of surprises.
You never know what to expect.
So after our son was born, I called my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent to set up a life insurance policy in case something happened to me.
Sawyer is now 2.
And we'll soon have a sister. There's no one else I would trust with protecting my family.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Baylor alumni are more than 160,000 strong. When we all join hands to support our university, we don't just move the needle, we move mountains. Working together, we create life-changing opportunities for students on the field, in the classroom, in the laboratory, and in life for generations to come. So get connected, get involved. Learn how at baylor.edu/alumni.
Let the journey to financial brilliance begin with Genco's limited time offers. Max your earnings with a Kasasa cash account and get paid monthly with a 4.25 APY. That's $425 annually. Then invest in a 13-month share certificate and earn 4.9 APY. That's $529. Earn cash and outshine the rest. At Genco, we offer you the sun and the moon. Kasasa based on average daily balance of $10,000. Certificate based on $10,000 investment. See GencoFCU.org for details. NCUA.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Matt Brown, extra points. This is Christmas for him. He received his college football, EA Sports College Football on Friday. I just saw one of his tweets, personal news. I just threw a touchdown off a double halfback pass. EA Sports College Football 25 is here. Matt Brown, only one we'd want to have on to discuss this right off the top. Matt, thanks for your time. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, David Smoke. Is it everything you thought it was going to be?
Gentlemen, first of all, thanks for having me. It still is a little bit surreal after being so deep in this beat for the last 3 years, right? I didn't expect this to dominate so much of my professional life over a little while. So you worry, is it going to be anticlimactic when this is over? And then you get the sticks in your hands and you see the thing that you've been writing about and you see your name in the credits and you see your alma mater. And it's a little emotional, not just because it feels like the finale of this very long journey. It's not a perfect video game, but it is definitely a very fun one, and one that I'm very confident college football fans will really deeply enjoy.
Now, take us through the last 72 hours. You told me on the phone that you had to remind yourself to get up and go exercise. Have you showered and bathed regularly? What's your family think?
Yeah, gentlemen, I don't mind saying this. I'm actually pretty proud of myself here that I think I've done a fairly decent job of continuing to cosplay as a functional human being. It's funny because I didn't actually know I was going to get the game on Friday until 8 o'clock. I get a text from a staffer that I know over at EA. It was just like, oh, well, if you want the game, you will have a code ready for you in 10 minutes to go make arrangements. But I'm a husband. I'm a dad. I had other plans that weekend. I had lawn care responsibilities and other things. So I had to stagger that stuff out, knowing I couldn't just drop heaven and earth. I'm not at a place in my life where I can play this for 12 hours in one sitting. It's it's 90 minutes here, 90 minutes there, having to tell my children, I'm sorry, I got to take over the television. This is for work. It doesn't look like it's for work. Daddy's yelling like it's not for work, but it really is for work because, I have a formal review of this game. I have to file a copy for it by tomorrow. I have a couple of other editorial responsibilities. So it's been a whirlwind, but a very fun one.
So, Matt, when this was first announced as returning, it's been a whirlwind. I guess you'd use that term there as well. And you've been all over it and riding that whirlwind. And you had the thousands of questions in your mentions and emails and all of that. You've delivered a lot of information. But just watching the buildup of this game over the last few months, I think we all understood that there was a piece missing in video game fandom with no college football video game. But now, man, the game's barely even out. There's content creators that are hundreds of thousands of views and just crazy new followers and just the energy around this game. What are kind of the expectations do you gather from the EA side on how successful they expect this to be? And has some of the fervor maybe even already surpassed what they thought, even knowing the hole that was left with no college football video game?
The way that you described it there at the end of surpassing expectations is exactly what I have heard on the EA side. Going back about a year ago, when I would talk to some financial analysts, the people that would track this stock, or when I would talk to people on deep background of the company, everybody would say, we're confident this is going to be a commercially successful game, but they were the projections were relatively conservative. And I think we talked about it on this program, right? This is not going to outsell Madden. This it might not even sell 2 million copies. It's going to be a $200 million, $170 million game. That's just fine. That would be a success, right? And what I've heard, over the last couple of days is based on the pre-sale data, based on some of the response on social media, based on what they're seeing from very early returns, it's going to do better than that. And their conservative projections have been surpassed. So I'm not saying that this is going to outsell Madden. I still don't believe that's the case here. But this, especially given the time of the year when there's not a ton of other major AAA releases, I think they have a hit. Even as the tenor on social media might change in a couple of weeks, when people, the nostalgia kind of fades from their eyes and they begin to see some of the warts in the whole thing, it's going to sell very, very well.
Do you think because it's been such an exhausting wait that also leads to the interest now?
Oh, I'm sure that's part of it. It's been a long time, and college football as a sport has changed so much since then. The gaming has changed so much since then. I think we've talked about it before too. I legitimately think a portion of the passion buildup here isn't just because people missed the game. I think there's a little bit of a sense of nostalgia among people of a certain age, that wanting to go back and feel for a couple of hours like they did when they were 21, or they did when they didn't have as many responsibilities. and that this game subconsciously is a mechanism for that. So you have all those things, but college football as an entity has not become less popular since 2014. If anything, it's only become more popular, and this is the vehicle for more and more people to be engaged with that sport.
Matt, what would you say? Like you said, it's not perfect. What are there like little warnings without, obviously, disparaging the game that you can tell people to look out for?
Yeah. I mean, I would say, look, it's the game is like, it came out to early release people like 20 minutes ago. Mm-hmm. There's almost certainly going to be a patch on Friday. And there's going to be additional updates over the coming weeks, even before the season actually starts. One of the things that a lot of people have noticed, I think some Baylor fans will notice this, and I've seen this from a couple other places, is that while there's been a lot of attention to detail to try to replicate uniforms and stadiums and campus traditions as much as possible, it's not perfect. And people will be able to see, maybe we're missing a building here, or this renovation happened last year and we thought it was going to be in the game and it isn't. I don't think I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. The number of uniforms that are in the game that I am seeing now was less than the uniforms that I saw when I played a beta version back in May, which makes me think either some are coming out later or there might be a DLC pack or something else. So that is something where I've heard a couple of fans raise some questions. I've noticed a couple of small bugs in the Ultimate Team mode. Right now, the game presentation says that every player is from Alabama, which I imagine is going to get patched pretty soon. Look, it has like the home city correct, but the state always says Alabama. But it's little things, right? So the game itself is still very playable and very enjoyable.
What conference are Florida State and Clemson in your version of the video game?
Man, I have not. I'll be transparent. Of the 15 hours or so that I've spent in this game, I've only spent about 2 in Dynasty. I haven't messed around with realignment all that much. And the teams that I'm playing with are like Akron and Utah State at the very beginning. So like whatever Clemson's doing, that's in a completely different universe for my world. But I'm excited to see what other, community people do for their, I've seen some people bringing back the Southwest Conference. I've seen a lot of people talking about rebuilding the Pac-2. I'll be excited to see what people come up with.
Yeah. Now, so when you say, for those like me, when you say Dynasty compared to whatever else, explain that for the ones like me who don't play it.
Sure. So there's several different modes in the game, and one of the most popular among the community for this is called Dynasty mode, where you create a coach, and you can decide what kind of coach you want to be. Do you want to be a coach that focuses on being a master motivator or a great schematic technician who might give his team bonuses during the game? You want to be an elite recruiter. Fill out your staff and you take over a program. And a lot of people like to then take over really small schools like Sam Houston State or Akron or Old Dominion and somehow turn them into a 5-star recruiting superpower. Or you might start a career with one of those schools and then bail the first time you can to go to a higher profile job. That's very popular. It's not the only mode. You can play through the career of an athlete in a mode called Road to Glory. They have online competition modes, and they have a card collecting mode where you can build your own ultimate team out of other players or historic greats and compete online or against the computer.
Smokey, you ready to buy yours yet?
No. No, I mean this with all due respect to the game. I know I can tell how popular it is. I'm sure a lot of people, all of you in this room, will have a great time with it. Matt, of course. I don't think I could keep that. I don't think I could stay focused enough and enough time to learn it, to enjoy it. And if I can't do that, then I can't play it. You hear that from anybody at all, Matt?
I'm sorry?
You hearing that from anybody at all that's like afraid of it?
I do. And I wrote about this a little bit here today. And I have a lot of empathy for that because I've been telling people that, there's a whole bunch of folks on YouTube that are very popular because they're competitive elite players of this game. And I am not that guy. I have learned about this as a reporter, but if I was to play against a random Joe on the street, I'd probably lose. I don't have the time or the patience to master the stick skills for anything here. And when I'm playing, I'm not playing on the highest difficulty level. I am what I believe the kids these days would call a casual. And if that's the way that you want to play, there's ways to do that. There's even some people that will get this game and basically never play at all. all they'll do is handle the recruiting and the roster management and the custom schedules. They'll basically be playing like an athletic director, and they'll let the computer simulate all the games. But I have empathy. If you're somebody that's like, I can figure out Tecmo Bowl, I can figure out Bill Walsh college football. But once you move to 3D and once the manual for figuring out the controls is 6 pages deep, I understand that's not for everybody. That's completely okay.
Matt Brown with us on 365 Sports.
What is the best team you've played with so far as like your ability to go through it, and what's the most challenging?
That is a good question. I don't mind sharing this, right? When I was first starting a dynasty, and again, you typically pick a lower rated team. And I remember thinking, I know a lot about football. I've been playing this game for a long time. I'm probably very well versed in how the blood and guts of the system work. I bet if I fire up a game with Akron and they play against just a regular OG5 team, I bet I could probably still win. I fired up a game against Hawaii, and I just got destroyed. I think I lost by 40. I was blown up at the line of scrimmage on every single play. I'm sure that like real life Akron is not the worst team in college football, and that they have plenty of guys who can play very well. I don't know if it's the playbook or me just being an idiot or what. I wasn't going up against Georgia's defensive front, but I was just demolished. I went to Ohio State. I grew up in Columbus. I've spent a little bit of time playing with that team. And as you might expect, that's a team that translates really well to video games. I think a lot of people are going to also have a lot of fun playing with Ole Miss and Oregon this year. But I will say, like, the real legitimately fun thing that I've already noticed is that there really are a lot of different ways to play. There's like a jillion different playbooks, and how your roster and your team align with the kind of offense and defense you want to run matters a lot. Right? If you take Michigan's roster and throw in the veer and shoot, it's going to look pretty ugly. But you can take a team that's way worse, but is built to play football that kind of way, and you can make life deeply uncomfortable for everybody else, which I think is very realistic, because that's how you see upsets, and that's how you see teams that don't have five-star talent win a lot of football games. And you can do that with the video game this year, no doubt about it.
Matt, I know that you've been spending a good portion of your time on covering the video game and all that. Glad to see that it's starting to get out there, and look forward to seeing all the content that comes from that. Have you had much time to really, or do you typically pay a whole lot of attention to media days? Obviously, the Big 12 last week had the Pac-2 had their soiree, that one of those nights. Got the SEC starting today. Anything popped out of interest to you? Kind of how do you generally view media days?
Earlier in my career, this was something that I paid a lot more attention to, and I do it a little bit less now, not because it's not important, but just because it's generally less aligned with my beat. So one of the biggest things I noticed is something that probably isn't a big deal to other people in this footprint, was the idea of the Big 12 kind of pivoting away from their initial plans for Mexico about playing, football and men's basketball games. Now I believe it's women's soccer and maybe some other ones. I have been actually talking to baseball. Yeah. I have been talking to a couple of other ADs and associate ADs in the league about this before, because I'm finishing up a story right now about Latino outreach, what that looks like in many different programs. And what I was hearing before that announcement was a lot of schools in the conference were excited about the idea intellectually, until they sat down and realized, oh my gosh, am I going to have to give up a conference home game? How are we going to go get passports for all of our players? How are we going to make the finance for all this work? What does this change for my insurance? And suddenly it became much more technically difficult than they thought it was, even though I think there's a lot of teams in this league that they met in Mexico City could sell the place out. So it was a good idea. I'm not surprised that they're maybe shifting to something a little bit less ambitious. I hope that, if not as a conference, I hope some more schools in this league look at finding ways to maybe build bridges to their Spanish-speaking neighbors as not just a nice thing to do as for higher education, but something that makes sense for their athletic department too.
Last thing, that because everyone is so enthralled with realignment, that there was a report by a pretty respectable writer in Jason Shear out of Arizona about internal belief within the Big 12 about FSU and Clemson. Now, it also goes on to say you have to do A, B, C, D, and E, or A, B, C, D, and E have to happen. Your thoughts about even that idea?
My thoughts are, at this point, is what happens and on what timeline for Clemson, Florida State, for that matter, North Carolina, and probably a couple other schools in the ACC, is unique because it's not up to television executives, really. It's not up to university presidents, certainly not up to ADs or conference commissioners. It's going to be up to the legal system, unless somebody decides to come up with a truly outrageous amount of money to simply buy all of these things here out. Now, one thing I've learned about writing about the law and college sports over the last 4 years is in court, sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, which means that it can be hard to project exactly how everything goes down. But these kind of cases, particularly over this much money and over across multiple states, tend to take a little while. So I would be a little bit surprised if there is a final resolution to ACC's realignment over the next 3 months. Not to say that it's impossible, but I tend to look at this as a longer timeline, especially with so many other massive uncertainties in college athletics right now. What I've been hearing at the low major level is that has created an environment to make realignment take longer or be a little bit less likely in the short term. We'll see if that comes into play here with the ACC. I'm not expecting significant moves in the immediate future there.
Great stuff, Matt. Always love having you on the show. Enjoy the game. I know you are.
How relieved are you to just not have to field any more questions about certain details of the game?
Well, fellas, you and I both know they're not going to stop, right? They're just going to think of something else. But here's the thing, right? On Thursday morning, I get on an airplane and I go on vacation. And I'm going to go someplace where my cell phone doesn't work, and it's going to be glorious. And when we come back, we'll see if Reddit still, wants to know about pixelated shadows or something else, or if we move on. I am deeply thankful for the attention and for the interest from so many people. But I am also very excited for people to leave me alone a little bit for stuff that I cannot control.
I bet. Get some sleep if you can. Thanks for your time, Matt,
my best.
and the insight, because it's right there in your hands. He's already started playing the game since Friday.
I think about those people who post those things on Reddit about pixelated shadows, and then they sit there and wonder, like, why did the girl say no to me for the senior prom? Like, this is because you care about that.
You can get deep into some of the complaints on certain things. But, yeah, I mean, I know that he got hammered, and there was a time about a month ago where he was getting just plastered with questions about, like, well, I mean, just name a thing. And it was like he just didn't have the answers for it. And you could tell he was getting a little bit frustrated because, it's just like, give it some, like, be patient. And it's impossible to ask anybody to be patient about anything, So, especially when they're so excited over something, which clearly, that's why I asked him at the beginning of, are they already kind of surprised with how much this thing is taking off? Because I'm telling you, there's certain guys, like, on YouTube already that, like, they get 250,000 views for, like, their first dive into the video game last week, and it's like massive amounts of following, and then just the number of people who want to keep diving even further and further into it. I'm very interested to see just kind of what the online community and the streaming community and the sales are like for this game, because it does feel by the time we kind of reached the point of its release that it was like at a bubbling point, right, of where there was just so much energy surrounding the release and just excitement for it that I'm thrilled that it's out. I'm thrilled that Matt doesn't have to field questions and that people can just go play on their own and either like it, love it, or, put it back in the box. But, it's going to be fascinating to see just how much this continues to become, a side thing in college sports coverage.
Is there a chat room on the side where you can ask questions to other people while you're playing the game?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's pretty cool.
I mean, there's people that stream on YouTube. It's no different than basically what we do, except for they just might have it dressed up differently. And that's also where they get a lot of the video game streamers get a lot of super chats, like the good ones. They get, I think, because they've got like the teenagers at home with mom's credit card watching, and Paul knows that they spend, $10 so their streamer will shout them out, or maybe more, and to get attention. And it's like it's really weird own little ecosystem. But yeah, those guys can make a killing off of donations,
like a super chat.
Oh, my nephew, a few years ago, asked for either my mom's or my sister's credit card, and I don't know why they gave it to him, or they linked it up to the account so he could, I guess, had a gift certificate to download some things, and so it was still on his account. So he got on Twitch and gave like $600 to a Twitch streamer.
Yeah, I'm sure that happens a lot.
Which the thing is that you can call up Twitch and be like, this is my 14-year-old son that did this. And they're like,
okay.
I mean, you gave him the card.
Yeah.
I mean, like.
Who was it? Do you know?
I have no
Belle
idea.
Delphine?
Yeah, I have no idea. It was
the Paul brothers.
Yeah, I gotta hope it wasn't that, but
yeah,
who knows?
I mean, like I can only go so long in naming somewhat stream and like probably famous 10 years ago streamers. I'm not up on game as much now, but yeah, I saw that during COVID, especially that just streaming got way more popular because they were already at home playing video games. That's what they were doing to begin with. Everybody else was suddenly at home needing something to watch, and it's like, who's this guy and what's streaming and all of this? And so, yeah, there's a massive community for all sorts of games. There's already, you can see, a massive community for the NCAA game that's only going to grow more and more. And so how big that gets, again, I'm very interested to see that.
When we come back, we'll have Carter Yates from Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine. He's at SEC Media Days. And he's done a pretty good job on recruiting. Grayson Grunhafer nailed it last week at the end of the week on Taz Williams on how much Baylor was involved in that. Carter Yates followed that story too. We'll have Taz today just after 5 o'clock. This is 365 Sports. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace where you get two things done. One, find out what is bothering a muscle, a ligament. Maybe it's shredded, torn. Something's gone wrong there. And Ideal MRI, their imaging machine, will find it. Whether it's your shoulder, your back, possibly even around your knee, where it might be that is bothering you. They have a state-of-the-art technology MRI machine, an imaging machine. They will find out what is creating the pain. Then your doctor has the evidence, has the pictures, the images, and then they can work on how they fix it with you. The second part of it is they save you a ton of money. The average MRI right now is $1,100, and theirs is $497 or less every single time. Never more. Sometimes it can be less because they'll help you file your insurance claim too. IdealMRI.com in the Central Texas marketplace off I-35 in Waco.
Y'all listen up. Let me tell you something about group meals from Rudy's Barbecue. It's got all you need for all the folks you gotta feed, smoked meat, sides, and more. There's everything down to the tablecloth, just like the one that you see at the store. At a bridal shower, it's better than flowers. And a long business meeting, it'll pass the hours. It'll feed all the cousins at a family function. It's better than potluck at a church luncheon. Next time you need to feed 10 or more, call and order a Rudy's group meal.
Next in line.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoke. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets, sirloin steaks, bone-in ribeyes, boneless ribeyes, and even prime rib. Cut specifically the way you want, the thickness that you want. They're all delicious. They have Norwegian salmon, mahi-mahi, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey, variety of cheese, and several options of sausage links, and even regular jalapeno or cheese snack sticks, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, and ground beef, marinated beef or chicken fajitas, and always large briskets and tri-tip available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and tradition continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, a full-service butcher shop and bakery, open Monday through Saturday. The Bauer family, Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Ready to take your business to the next level? Carrion Solutions has got you covered. We deliver world-class IT consulting, including Quest On Demand and Migration Manager, M365 and Exchange migrations, Active Directory assessments, security hardening, and Windows Server upgrades. Our experts specialize in consulting, monitoring, support, and managed IT services. We promise vision, professionalism, and unbeatable value. Satisfaction guaranteed. If you're not happy, we make it right. Remember the name Carrion Solutions. For more info, email sales@carrionsolutions.com or visit carrionsolutions.com. That's CARRION solutions.com. Carrion Solutions IT success guaranteed.
Want to send a message to the show? Jump in the Rudy's Country Store and Barbecue chat room.
365 Sports. We start this 4 o'clock hour. Carter Yates, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, will join us here momentarily at SEC Media Days with Dave Campbell's. That's right there in their backyard at the Omni in Dallas. Carter with Paul Catalina, Craig Smoke, David Smoke on 365 Sports. Carter, thanks for your time. So you're there today, right, at Dallas and at the Omni?
Yes, sir. A lot of stuff going on in the DFW. We got MLB All-Star Game, Home Run Derby tonight, and then SEC Media Days to top it all off.
Absolutely. All right, so what was your take from anything said or what you saw today?
Well, I think it starts off with Greg Sankey, and he is obviously the elder statesman politician of college sports right now in an era where no one is in charge. The conference commissioners have become the de facto leaders of this sport. He took a few not so subtle shots at conferences such as the Big 12, who had looked to private equity to kind of level the financial playing field a little bit. And then we also saw him 3 separate times say he is focused on the 16 teams here right now, and 3 separate times another reporter asked him about 16 teams. It was almost like no one believed him when he said the SEC was good with where they're at with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. So he is saying he does not want to expand anymore as of right now, but everyone's calling his bluff a little bit today.
Carter, it's interesting to hear, Greg Sankey kind of rip on people for trying to scramble after the situation he created, isn't it?
A little bit. Now, he didn't call out the Big 12 specifically or private equity specifically, but basically his thinly veiled words were, it is up to the college leaders in this game right now to find the solutions and not look to outside stakeholders, which seemed like what my colleague Ishmael Johnson had said on Twitter, a thinly veiled shot at the Big 12. It feels like that's something that he has put himself in a position to where he can say and kind of scoff at people looking at private equity money. But if you're the Big 12 and other conferences that are now on the outside looking in of a Power 2 conference, you got to understand why they're looking to any and all options, such as revenue patches on officials' jerseys and things of that nature to kind of level the financial playing field.
Carter, what was the Omni as far as just a venue? I remember Big 12 Media Days there years and years ago, but, to be fair, they don't have quite the spectacle or the following that the SEC does. I know it's split up into 4 days, but just kind of what was the Omni as a setting for this event earlier today?
So I always drive into the Dallas-Fort Worth area because I live over here and I see it lit up, the Omni, and when the Texas Rangers won the World Series and things of that nature. I'd never been inside the hotel. It's beautiful in there, and there's a lot of big-time media members here that I'm getting to see for the first time, such as Paul Feinbaum, Jordan Rogers, the SEC Network. Saw J.D. Piquel with On3 Sports here earlier. Josh Pay from Lake Kick. It's a little bit buttoned up, I would say. We had some colleagues go out to the Big 12 Media Days last weekend in Vegas, and it seems like kind of a free-for-all there with a lot of access. The SEC runs a tight ship here, so guys are getting on, saying their piece, and then being whisked out the side door. But they run a tight ship, and they're the biggest brands in football, so they got to have their nose on the pulse, their finger on the pulse.
Would you do me a favor? Walk up to JD, who used to work for us, and say he'd be nothing without us. He'll respond well. Yeah, he'll respond well. Great guy. Carter, you wrote a great story about A&M and Texas a couple weeks ago. Like, fantastically well done story about A&M and Texas, and A&M fumbling their lead away, so to speak, when it comes to on-the-field success in football. What was the most interesting part about kind of diving into that now as they rejoin conferences together?
I think the interesting part for me was diving into why A&M left the Big 12 in the first place. And a lot of it had to deal with they felt Texas ran the Big 12 conference. And I didn't know that DeLoss Dodds, the Texas A&M athletic director, actually had reached out to Texas A&M about combining the Longhorn Network, what became to be the Longhorn Network, into a Lone Star State sports network with Texas and Texas A&M. Now, I don't know if those terms were ever 50-50. I say in the piece that the A&M reporters I talked to said from the jump that was a full Texas controlled channel that would have just emphasized A&M's sort of little brother status in the Big 12. But when I originally looked at it, I went to Texas. I'm a Texas grad, and I followed Texas and Texas A&M very closely. You think that A&M kind of squandered their opportunity in the SEC because they're coming off of when they first got the SEC, the Johnny Manziel years. Johnny Manziel wins the Heisman. I have a quote in there from Joe Levin at Texas Monthly. You talk about when Charlie Strong was at Texas and Johnny Manziel was really rolling at Texas A&M. You look in 10 years, everyone would have picked Texas A&M would be in a better situation than Texas was. But what that doesn't factor into is now Texas is ascending coming into the SEC, and A&M had to fire Jimbo Fisher to get out of neutral. But Kyle Fields now just held a 110,000-person George Strait concert. Their enrollment has gone up from 40,000 to 80-some-odd thousand. They're one of the largest universities in the nation. So that alumni donor base, their NIL base, and their stadium capacity, they're a different beast now about to play Texas monetarily than it was when Texas A&M last flunked off the field after Justin Tucker hit that game-winning field goal.
Yeah, it is interesting. I think Texas is their Wednesday, A&M is their Thursday. If you could ask Sarkisian a question, I know you're an alum, but just as someone who's reporting from there, if you could ask him one question, at least for right now, what would it be?
That is a good question. I would ask him what was the hardest part about getting from year one to year three Texas into an SEC-ready team? And I have a feeling he would probably say the offensive line in the trenches, because you got to remember when he first came to Texas 3 years ago, they couldn't hold a spring game. They didn't have enough offensive linemen. And then he signed 12 offensive linemen in the next 2 recruiting classes right after that, to the point where Texas was dominating along the trenches in the Big 12. So I assume the offensive line would be the answer, but I wonder if he would let you in on maybe a behind-the-scenes thing administrative-wise. I don't know. I'm just conjecture here. But what was the most difficult part about getting Texas in year 1, 5-7, to Texas college football playoff berth in year 3, ready for the SEC?
Carter, LSU, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Vanderbilt were up today. Anything of those 4 that stood out above anything else that you heard, read, or saw today?
Well, LSU, I think, is a really interesting case because they've got Garrett Nussmeier taking over at quarterback for the Heisman winner, Jaden Daniels. And Garrett Nussmeier was a Flower Mound Marks alum in the DFW area. It was fun to get to talk to him and learn his insight on why he didn't transfer. He was part of, I believe, the 2021 recruiting class, and most of those guys, if they hadn't started yet, this is his 4th year he's going to be there, and he hasn't started yet, but he's stuck behind Jaden Daniels. And it was interesting to hear Brian Kelly talk about that and say he realized, coming from a quarterback family, obviously his father, Doug Nussmeier, is a quarterback coach of the Philadelphia Eagles, that you can't always chase greener grass, and it won't always work out chasing that. He committed to LSU. He is not the same style of player as Jaden Daniels, but from the head up, Brian Kelly talks about how both of them are so cerebral and have such a high football IQ. I would say that was extremely interesting to hear about from the LSU side.
Carter, I just clicked on your article, by the way, and I liked your the way you described Greg Sankey as a Rockefeller with no Roosevelt, someone to check him a little bit. Appreciate a fellow history nerd there, but. I mean, a lot of the talk was about realignment and Greg Sankey saying he wasn't interested in all that, to talk about it because it's not even there yet. That gets lost in the shuffle. Was there anything that stood out to you outside of those things that Greg Sankey said today?
I really just think that the SEC has positioned themselves now in a space where obviously there is a power too, but he talked about the regionality you still have in the Southeastern Conference. He basically said we're one of the conferences where the name still means something. I mean, the Big Ten is now coast to coast. The ACC has the Atlantic Coast Conference, but Pacific Coast, Stanford, and Cal added there, and then also SMU in the DFW area. Southeastern Conference, I know Texas and Oklahoma used to be part of the Southwest Conference, but considering the regionality of these other conferences, it is pretty situated in the southeastern part of the United States. And I'm really interested to see how that does recruiting-wise. I know recruiting is a very national thing and phenomenon in college sports right now, but it's going to be really hard for the top players in the southeast of the United States to leave this area because there are so many good options of schools. So I don't know how much more times you're going to see a Southeastern Conference high schooler in that territory go to a Big Ten Ohio State. I mean, it remains to be seen, but the regionality is something that's still interesting here.
I think you'll see Ohio State or even Penn State or Michigan or Washington, Oregon, and USC pluck somebody out of there, even maybe a highly ranked guy, but a player. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting that they almost put like a big, huge 10-foot fence around that area, and especially with that where they are now as a new conference. Carter, when did you start at Dave Campbell's? Because I noticed when you did, because we have Mike Craven on. We have, obviously, I know Matt Stepp incredibly well, Greg Tepper. When did you start there?
So I started the Monday after I graduated from the University of Texas in 2023. I was part-time a little bit that last semester, but then by May 15th, 2023, I was full-time. So got one full season under my belt and heading into year two, excited about it.
All right, last thing. Entering the weekend, we have Grayson Grundhafer with 365 Sports, SicEm365.com. He covers recruiting very well. He felt like that Baylor was going to steal Taz Williams from Penn State or SMU or A&M or whoever it was going to be. When you saw the decision come down, and Taz is going to join us today, what was your reaction to him committing to Baylor?
Oh, I had no idea that Baylor was even a possibility for Taz Williams. I was actually covering the commitment live, and he had 4 bucket hats on the table. Baylor was not one of them. He spins this wheel, and for a second, I think he's just going to choose let God decide. Like, whatever this, lever lands on, I'm going to that school. He puts on a Michigan bucket hat, quickly takes it off. His father comes behind the wheel, rips it off, turns the wheel around, and it's all Taz Williams in Baylor gear. It was a total shock to us in the stands covering it at Red Oak High School. But I think Dave Aranda has done a terrific job right now on the recruiting trail. I know he made waves last week at Big 12 Media Days when he said the differences were paying players, but Dave Aranda also talked about last year he felt really good a lot of times about the in-home visits and the recruiting visits that he had with these guys, and really NIL was just where they were falling short. So now that they've got that situated, he can still be transformational in this process, because I don't think the problem's ever been Dave Aranda on the recruiting trail. It was just some of the resources they had. Now that they got that figured out, you're seeing what can happen.
By the way, just for your information, that comment was on our show.
Well, y'all caught fire on social media.
Yeah, we did. It was, and we weren't expecting that ourselves.
It's the shortest answer he's ever given to a question in 5 years now.
That's since 2020, yeah.
So 4 or 5 years, yeah.
All right, hey, Carter, thank you very much. Enjoy the week. We'll talk to you soon, and have a great day.
Yeah, thank y'all so much. Thanks for having me on.
Carter Yates, Dave Campbell's Texas Football Magazine, at SEC Media Days, covering day one earlier today.
Yeah, those comments actually saw, I got a little bothered by, like, let's say 2 people on the Baylor message boards about, like, why did he say that? What a dumb thing to say. It's like, you couldn't be more wrong. I mean, like, what a dumb thing to say. He landed Taz Williams out of complete nowhere 2 days later. Yeah, you bingo, dude. You're totally on. Those are terrible comments to make. No, it's only made him, like, way more talked about than he ever would have been otherwise. I saw somebody say, why say pay players? Why not just say we've got a new head OC that's got an up-tempo offense? It's because they would nobody would talk about that afterwards.
Yeah, no.
Nobody would talk about that afterwards.
No.
But the paying players is where they were missing, and that was the point of the quote. And now that they've done that, yes, the person over player and the more people-related things that program wants to be about and can be about, those can come through. But there was that disconnect, and it was like you were getting outbid, and you had to get your NIL in order. And now that they have, look at this last month, guys.
And Taz Williams was going to get whatever he was asking for from anybody, any of those schools. Let me tell you, the rock star in this case was Keenan Hall.
Oh, yeah, he has been.
When he recruited, obviously, Taz at SMU and said, no matter where you commit, if you go somewhere else, we will remain in touch.
Yeah.
And then with the transfer portal, that's smart to do that anyway.
And I think if there was one thing from Dave's comments that you wish maybe he would have added in there, but he went on to talk, is this like, Keenan Hall specifically as far as, but that's not really what we were.
No.
We weren't deep diving. It was just like, hey, what's the big difference? Well, we're paying players now. But yeah, I think if you were to get him to explore that or follow that up even further, then Keenan Hall would be right at the top of the list of the other difference makers.
Now I will say this. I ran into a Baylor staffer who works in the athletic department, and that's where I'll leave it just because I don't want them to be out there. But I said, "What did you think of what Dave said?" And they were like, "Fine with it," but my initial reaction was like, "Hey, put some curtains on the window." Like, just it's true. I mean, there's not anything wrong or illegal or anything, but the whole just the nuances of things that people will say and get asked is just like a minor annoyance to them.
That's worrying about what other people think as a Baylor issue is worrying about what everybody else thinks.
But that was like their initial thing was like, just put some curtains on the window.
We've gotten multiple 4-stars lately, but we got to be careful about how we're viewed by Texas fans. Like, give me a break, man.
I think the reason and how quickly and what he said, and Craig, you put it up, it was so short and sweet and almost like The Godfather, the way he said it. And that's also one reason why it went out as viral as it did.
But I did expect there to be some like, oh my God. And it's like, it's such an issue that he said that they've gone and landed another 4-star player. They've gone on this crazy couple of weeks run that they've had. So yeah, I mean, I can see where somebody's a little bit taken aback, but that's been nothing but a beneficial quote. Now you can rest assured that every recruit you talk to is going to be like, oh, hey, I hear you guys are paying players. And you know what though? The answer to that, if you can swing it with that guy and he's worth it, then you'll find a way. And if not, then you won't. And that's all there is to it. But, yeah, I don't see how that did anything other than and put them in the news in a positive way. And clearly it's having positive recruiting effects, the fact they've got their NIL in order.
I spoke with Taz's father, and there was a little bit of this buzz over the weekend. It's like, oh, Baylor all of a sudden got involved. They were always involved. There was a mix-up in the graphic based on timing of his top 10 and top 5. This was not like all of a sudden Wednesday of last week when Aranda made that comment that Taz Williams got the bag. He was supposed to visit Baylor in May. There was a confusion about a couple of things as far as the timing. He was going to visit it, I guess, sometime during the summer. It ended up being the dead week or dead period. So he was going to visit this weekend. They're going to go on vacation. So he was always in the mix because of Keenan Hall, too. That just also happened to be something that did not hurt in the recruitment, especially with the names. He had the longest list and probably highest rated list of offers from anybody as a wide receiver, and I believe for sure in the state of Texas, but maybe in America.
Well, I think Carter might have had it on his profile, or somebody else from Dave Campbell's did, that he had the most offers in Texas.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if they clarified that it was
wide
receiver,
it wasn't,
but he had the most offers in Texas. And so, yeah, they've landed 3 4-stars. And depending on where you look at the databases, like I know like some might have a guy as a low 4-star and then the other side has him as a high 3-star. But as far as like across the board, an average 4-star, I believe they had 0 heading into the last 2 weeks, and now they've gotten 3, if not 4 or 5 guys. They've got 3 for sure.
Stewart, Morgan, and Williams.
No, Morgan, Taz Williams, and Ja'Cory Watson.
I keep on saying it's Ja'Cory Watson.
Stewart is.
Yeah, no, Stewart, it's Watson. That's Watson.
Yeah, so those 3 are all national 4-star rated guys, gave them their first, second, and third 4-stars. So, yeah, something's working. They've got their ducks in a row, and now the missing piece is Dave Aranda's job security, which he can – solidify by going out and winning some games this year. And it's going to be easier said than done. But, I mean, you're seeing the signs of when things are rowing in the right direction and the pieces are in place of how good they can be in an area like recruiting where maybe that's been a bit of an afterthought because they haven't been successful. They didn't have their ducks in a row. And now you've got the combination of a Keenan Hall and the rest of the staff and their NIL house in order and Aranda's personality and what they can sell, and I think they've got a really good message now. They're going to have to go out and win this year, though, to keep that thing going, but it's a much better place right now that they're in than they were even 1 month ago, and that's some momentum that you hope that you can ride.
When we come back, George Teague, former Alabama safety, also played in the NFL, Packers, Cowboys, and more. I thought I saw a picture earlier today that he was going to be at SEC Media Days. He did have a lot of things to get done today. He's going to join us. What are you looking at?
I heard some national names being floated. I guess they just missed out on the Big 12 Media Days last week. I guess SEC Media Days is like the event to be at for college football.
Yeah, it's in the middle of the country. It's in Dallas. It's easier to get to. But
certainly. But it's just
it's the SEC, man.
It's the SEC. Yeah. It's the SEC. So I'm glad the Big 12 got their event, done and over with, so that we can kind of just sit back and watch the rest of this and just take in whatever notes of interest there are. But Sankey was definitely not scrambling, but trying to avoid the expansion comments, it sounds like at any cost.
I thought it was interesting after the first day when Yormark opened up in Vegas that sometime I think that night or that next morning that Sankey tweeted out a bunch of social media data because Yormark had talked about how they had exploded with all of this and that, and I was like, why all of a sudden would he just send out, well, somebody asked me somebody wanted to know whether or not, and he put out that information. I think he and Yormark, I think they both know that the other one's there. Sankey obviously is the 800-pound gorilla, but Yormark's like the damn little dog that's not afraid to bite your freaking
He's
ankle.
The disruptor. He's the annoying gnat that, I'm sure Sankey doesn't feel all that threatened by. Because of his positioning in the collective of schools that he has, but I do think that you're probably side-eyeing the guy a little bit. Like, what are you up to now? What are you trying to do now to disrupt the ecosystem? And I think Sankey leans and said he was more of a traditional guy.
Yes.
And Yormark is not.
No.
And so I think that's a very interesting contrast of styles that we could watch play out here. But yeah, certainly he's having to answer questions in part because of Brett Yormark.
It's like someone you never really paid much attention to, but all of a sudden you have to kind of pay attention to what they're doing. We got a break coming up. George Teague, his thoughts about the SEC now with the 2 new schools as they have their media days at the Omni in Dallas. This is 365 Sports. Petty Clinic, lowt.com. Men's health is what Dr. Petty specializes in. Committed to providing men the most innovative, high-quality health care available. Unique services dedicated to men 24/7. Dr. Petty via office visit, also virtual visits if that's what you want, a phone call, a secure text, or email. Available to discuss exciting new wave of men's health care, including testosterone. 1 out of every 3.5 men have symptomatic issues of low testosterone. Fatigue, loss of energy, poor sexual performance, ED, loss of even any interest of that, decreased muscle mass and strength, weight gain, excess body fat, even if you're active and have a pretty good diet, depressed mood, moodiness, no, not like the one I usually have for once or twice a week, poor sleep, insomnia, poor mental focus, and much more. It is what testosterone can affect in your body. It's low testosterone that can create all of that, some of that, and maybe you have symptoms. For more information, contact Dr. Petty and his staff at pettycliniclowt.com.
Celebrate American quality and value during the Red, White, and Blue sales tag event at Richard Carr. Drive the best. Get professional-grade power and first-class interior in a GMC Sierra. Qualified buyers save $9,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT models in stock with qualified trade-in. Military and first responders save an extra $500. Plus, find Red, White, and Blue savings tags on vehicles all over the lot. Drive home American quality and value during our Red, White, and Blue sales tag event at Richard Carr GMC.
Richard Carr. They have the truck for you.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Developed by Startup Waco, a nonprofit organization, GXG is a program designed to support the entrepreneurial development of Baylor University student athletes through NIL activations. The program helps student athletes maximize their platforms and offers a comprehensive support system for them to create and grow new businesses that not only benefit themselves, but also uplift the local economy. Fans who wish to support student athletes can donate to GXG via the GXG NIL Fund, BaylorBears.com/GXG. Contributions to support NIL activations through GXG can be made at BaylorBears.com/GXG. For more information, follow at GXG_GreenXGold on social media and visit the official website www.gxg.startupwaco.com. GXG, empowering student athlete entrepreneurship and uplifting the local economy through NIL activations.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine now has 2 locations to serve you. The original on Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street and the brand new spot in downtown Waco at 600 Franklin Avenue. If you're looking for the best in craft beers or local Texas bourbons, then the original is the place to be. And for the latest trends and online phenomenons, head downtown to the Franklin location. Either way, you're going to get the same great variety, customer service, and speedy experience. Check out both locations on their Facebook and Instagram pages, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive and North 19th Street, and now downtown on Franklin Avenue.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoke, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoke.
Great friend of the show, former Alabama star, NFL safety, George Teague, joins us on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul. I'm David Smoke. And George, I saw your tweet earlier today about getting over to the Omni, and I know you have other things to do. Did you ever get a chance to get over there for day one?
Yes, sir. I am actually sitting here now. I just got off with some of my people I collaborate with out of Mobile. I got to listen to head coach of Vanderbilt speak for a little while, and so I'm getting my feet wet, man. I'm jumping all the way in with you, Smoke.
Well,
it'll be good.
You'll do really, really well with it, George. No question. What are your thoughts about Alabama post Nick Saban with what Kyle DeBoer's done so far since that shocking announcement?
I think that Alabama has done a tremendous job of keeping the momentum at least going well to try to, get rid of some doubt of what it's going to be like since Saban is gone. The way he's been able to recruit, the support that he's being able to get just to help with, the NILs and the collectives and all this other kind of stuff. The support has been good there. So I think now it's really going to come down to, seeing how well can DeBoer coach truly in the SEC. What is Womack's defense going to look like, in the SEC? So, I'm in a good spot with the team. The only thing I'm worried about is can we stop, some people with our defense.
Do you think that this will maybe be a year because they had attrition because they lost a lot of guys that clearly came because Nick Saban was there overall, and then when Nick Saban leaves, they're going to take the opportunity and go somewhere else. Not necessarily that place would be better, but they were there for Nick Saban. Do you think they'll see a little bit of a depth restart at least for a year before Kalen DeBoer kind of establishes who he is in this league?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hoping most people are realistic about this, where you're always thinking you're going to go undefeated. I'm not sure that that's the case here. The schedule is tough. You still got to play Georgia, early, not to mention the other teams you got to go play on the road. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some battles, with a couple of games where maybe they don't go in our favor. The good thing is that the playoff is expanded to 12 teams, and I still think that, if we play well enough, Alabama might be able to get their way into a 12-team playoff format.
George, Alabama, and Nick Saban played Texas. They played Oklahoma in games along the way, but now conference foes is what awaits Kalen DeBoer and company. They get Oklahoma late in the year, the next to last game in Norman. They don't play Texas in the regular season. But what are your thoughts on those two now being part of the SEC?
I think they're going to be welcomed with open arms in a lot of ways. One is it's added to the competition with the SEC, right? I was just speaking about this, saying that even with them coming in, I think it's been an enhancement to it. It's going to bode well for our teams to get in the playoffs because I think this is just going to make this conference so much looked at by the committee in a different way, right? I do think Texas is further ahead of Oklahoma as far as being SEC ready. Texas proved that last year that they were pretty good and that they're kind of built for this. The way their recruiting year has been very good. So I think they're going to be very, very good this year. And I think the process has not been quite as fast for Oklahoma. They're going to bring a lot to the table. The fan base is awesome. They're going to travel well. They're going to compete well. But I think they still got another year or two of recruiting before they really get, into the meat of the strength of the conference.
In the late 90s, the SEC, of course, had some good teams. Spurrier won it, in 96? Was it 96? And then Tennessee won it in 98. But they weren't thought of at that particular time as the dominant conference when it comes to championships. And then that all changed in the next decade with LSU and Florida, eventually Alabama, and much more. Why did it change, in your opinion?
I'm not sure who the catalyst was, but someone changed how they recruited players, the type of player that they recruited. It's always been physical, that type of thing, running, but so was everybody, running options and all that kind of stuff back in the day. But it was the size of the guys and the speed component, I think, that changed the way the SEC recruited versus what other people were doing. We're very different than the Pac-12. Doesn't mean that, necessarily better. I just think the size and the speed is made for a different way people look at football because the physicality, man, you can't – that's hard to duplicate. You can see it and you think you're ready for it until you get punched in the face and, running to Mike Tyson and going, what is that? Where'd that come from?
What was George Teague's welcome to the SEC moment?
So it was Tennessee, my freshman year. I thought I was ready to go in and try to make a tackle, but I got totally blindsided by this tight end who literally landed me on my head that I never saw him. And it was like, oh, this is kind of for real, And then, right after that, I should say right after that, it was actually having to go into Auburn and trying to play them. And the speed and the noise it was just something that, I was getting hit and beat up on. And, it was just hard as a freshman to try to play the way I was being asked to play. And those guys were telling me, you ain't ready for this yet. And I wasn't.
George Teague with us on 365 Sports.
What do you think will be different for Jalen Milroe this year?
I think he's going to be a better overall quarterback, and the weaknesses that we thought we saw with him, meaning could he do pre-snap reads a little bit better. I feel like in the past they kind of, made things a little bit more easy for him, if I can say it that way. Hey, look to this side of the field. Here's your one read, maybe get to running. I think Kellen DeBoer is going to really start to develop him and say, okay, let's read this before the play. So, you got options before the play even starts. Hand it to the running back, throw it out here, make a check or something of that nature. So I think he's going to be a better quarterback, which is ultimately going to help his draft stock and things of that nature, because if he can start to read coverages at a higher level, he's going to be dynamic.
What are your thoughts if you were to look at the 16 teams this year, and there are some alphas, no doubt, Bama, Georgia, LSU, even though coming off a year that were somewhat disappointing. And then, of course, you have even Ole Miss, Texas, OU, whoever. What are your thoughts about how many deep will they be when we hit early, mid-November that have a chance to win or play for the SEC championship?
I think you'll have 3 to 4. I'm going to put Georgia in there obviously as a natural contender. They hadn't lost anything, I don't think. Texas, I think, is a natural contender for it. I would put both of them. And from any readings that I have, I did not get to listen to Lane Kiffin talk today, but it seems like they're just loaded with depth and everything else that, they may be someone that you're going to have to contend with. I'm not going to be a homer and say Alabama's going to be in the thing. I think there's so many good squads out there. But I legitimately think Georgia, Texas, and one other who that may be. I think so. You're probably going to have about 3 teams that are ready to go by the end of the year.
What do you think of Mike Elko and Texas A&M?
Oh, really?
I'm just asking.
Yeah, I see. You just asking. Well, my wife would be disappointed in me if I said anything good about Texas A&M, because she's absolutely appalled from the time that Texas A&M came into the SEC. And so, I think what they have not been able to do at the school with their football program, they had a good year, but Texas A&M football should be so much better. I think they're such in a hotbed here. They're gonna get passed up again by Texas coming in. You're still gonna have OU is probably gonna jump past it in a fast way. I would not be shocked if that they start thinking about doing something else, in the long run, because it's going to be hard for them to continue to try to compete, I think, just because even when they were loaded and they spent all that money, to try to get those players in, they couldn't get it done. So I think, it's an uphill battle for them, but it's going to be fun to watch and just kind of see how they actually compete this year.
George, you have a great personality. You had that when you played the game. You've had a podcast. You've gotten much more. You're there covering SEC Media Days and listening. What has been for you the easiest part of that transition, and also perhaps something that you weren't really aware of that you needed to do to make sure you did it right?
Going into a podcast, I think, was natural for me, doing Teague's Take on Wednesday nights, and we're actually going to expand it some, if I can, and say that, Manich is watching the film, right, and showing the film and doing breakdowns of games. So we're going to do a whole lot of that this year, and that's easy as a coach and as a player because that's what we're accustomed to. The other side that is difficult is stuff like this, being here and actually having to scrap a little bit, get nitty and gritty, got to get to these players, got to get to these coaches. How do I get that interview? How do I get that that one soundbite or that clip or something. I'm not really accustomed to that piece of having to go chase, like, oh man, just give me, 2 questions. That's been challenging for me, even when I would say I got into it from the media side last year, being at Cowboys camp and having to talk to, it's one thing talking to Coach McCarthy or the coach as a former player, but then actually having a recorder in front of him, see if he's going to answer my question. I was quite nervous, man, to try to see. And I'm calling you. I'm calling other people in the field. Like, what is the one question? If I get one question, what do I need to ask? So that's been very, very hard for me.
Is it? Do you feel like though you could pick up the phone and pretty much or text if you have their number? Pretty much anybody that's in football, and they'll respond to you.
Oh, absolutely. I've actually already started that. Hey, I'm going to be such and such. I'm going to be a media day. Can I come talk to you? How do I get to the player? Can I, something? Or, hey, I want to talk to you, coach, after practice or something. And they all, it in any profession, right? It's the relationships that you build, the respect that people have for you, and the respect that you give people, and the trust that you build with them. In our industry, is what do you say? Are you using their words? How do you portray it or whatnot? And so that was the thing that I was most making sure I worked on, and not losing people's trust when they're talking to me about things. So now when I text some prominent people in the National Football League and say, hey, I need to ask you something, typically they hit me right back and say, hey, can I call you in 30 minutes, or can you text me the question, or whatever it is. So pretty proud of that. Not quite the same at the collegiate level yet, but that's what I'm working on.
All right, so you brought that up. Everyone knows about the game you had against Miami and the play on the Strip. Everyone knows about the Cowboys and the Star with what was going on with T.O. Are you more known for that or the game with Miami?
Oh, man. If I had to pick one, and I think they're very, very close, Smoke. I think they're very, very close. But I think I still hear more about the national championship game and taking the ball away from Lamar almost all the time, whether it's here or not. Look over here. I'm sorry. West Neighbors, neighbors just walked up with my teammates. I'll talk to you soon. So I always hear about the Alabama play, even here. I don't necessarily hear about the Cowboys play as much when I go to Alabama, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think more statewide or nationwide, I'm known more for the Miami game and taking the ball away from Lamar.
Well, it was memorable. And people in the chat saying George Teague's a legend for those specific plays, but also just for how you played the game, both at Alabama and also in the NFL. And good luck with what you're doing, your coverage there, George. Thanks for your time. And let everyone know where they can find you. Just kind of give them a little bit of a tease there.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Hey, everybody can find me, man, at Teague Football on X and Instagram. If you like great podcasts, great content, if you want to learn how to play football or learn what coaches are thinking and break down plays, go ahead and follow or subscribe to our channel, Teague's Take, on YouTube. We shoot it on Wednesday nights. It's going to be a great season. Season 5 coming up, so we've been doing it for a while. Thank you so much for allowing me to be on, brother.
You too, buddy. Well, we'll be back in touch, and we'll discuss Cowboys during the season. George Teague with us, the game against Miami, stripping the ball from Lamar Smith, and, of course, the Lamar Thomas at Miami, and that unbelievable. They were not favored. And they won that game pretty handily.
I have so many memories about that game. I remember Gene. So that was one of the first ones, I think, where they transitioned to the crystal football.
Yep.
I don't know if it was the first one, but it was one of the first ones where they'd done that. And the next day they're trying to do a photo op with Gene Stallings, and he picks up the ball, and then whoever said that ball is valued at $28,000, and he was like, no, I'll just put that on down, or whatever it was. But that play was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I know that it got partially called back, but that play, I think, derailed Miami's swagger because they were going there thinking like, okay, this is – and if people remember, look, Miami's team is what all the SEC teams are like right now. Everybody was bigger, everybody was stronger, everybody was faster. And the SEC was known more as the we'll knock you in the mouth and slow this game down league. And Miami was rock and roll. They were absolute, like, let's go, 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 go kind of a thing. And Alabama wasn't necessarily that. They were a really good team, but they were not, the flashiness that Miami was. And when George Teague ran him down, they're like, oh, no, these guys can run. They just don't have to all the time.
Yeah.
Like, these guys are good. So
what was that, 92?
Yeah, 92.
So I looked it up when you mentioned the crystal ball. They've actually been giving that out for a long, long time, forever. Okay. But it really started in 1986. The trophy's been presented since 86, which was not soon after was the 92 game. And then, of course, through the BCS and now even into this day.
Yeah, I don't like the giant tube of lipstick that they present now, the big gold lipstick trophy that the CFB has.
That's a great way to look at it.
Thought that it was just not that good looking from the time they debuted it, especially compared to the crystal football, which sat on a big old base, but when you could lift that crystal football off, kiss it or whatever like everybody does, winning the national championship, it's a cool looking trophy. And it's cool looking when you got like an Oklahoma or an Alabama or whoever that's got multiple ones to see those lined up in facilities, that crystal football. I always thought that was a cool look. And I think that's one thing that's definitely not better is the national championship trophy that we get now versus that one.
It's a good way for you to say it. Like it looks like a thing of lipstick. I've been in some places where you could see the national championship trophy displayed, and it is awesome. Ohio State back in 2005 when I visited Columbus for a high school game. You walk in there and it's just, first of all, to me, I don't know a thing's better than like crystal when it comes to trophies or something that you win. And it's very, very it's impressive.
Yeah, I just don't in my head picture, and I know that there's moments of it, but I don't see like Dabo or whoever like kissing the big gold lipstick, thing as much as I do them holding the crystal football. Like that's the cover of multiple SIs. I feel like
sure is
somebody kissing like Matt Flynn.
I have the one, yeah.
Yeah, kissing the crystal football. I just think the crystal football was really cool. But yeah, always good to hear from George Teague. And the thing I was kind of in my head as y'all were mentioning Miami and stuff there is just it's very interesting in the whole realignment conversation of just how much nobody really gives a damn about Miami, like how much of an afterthought that they are, and whether that's valid or not. Just they're in a weird spot, I feel like, where they are not somebody that you go like, absolutely they've got a spot here. It's like even when you get into the Big 12, you're like, well, I think they would, but I don't know that they would be into it, and I don't know that the Big 12 would be into them more than they would be into, like, let's say, obviously like, Clemson, Florida State.
Like
but
NC State.
Yeah, like
NC State's a much bigger school.
Like you would think that Miami would just be like, that'd be like one of the first teams you'd go, yes, Miami and national. But like, I guess just the way the last like 20 years have gone and just the fact that their fandom is not all in that city the way that a lot of college towns are, that maybe that hurts them as well. But it's just interesting to see their name kind of tossed about, not like it's some big bad name like FSU is, but instead like maybe they'll have a spot, maybe they won't kind of a thing.
Well, they're a school, like, they do fit the Big 12 of the profile that they're a school that's a similar size to the smaller private schools or even the smaller state schools.
TCU, Baylor.
Baylor, Iowa State's in the massive school, the smaller state schools or the private schools in the Big 12, but they have this metropolitan area where they need that Big Ten or SEC money is clearly, and they've got people now finally spending money, but where they're behind is Miami, who was the college football program of the 80s, really. They were the college football program of the 80s. They had a head start on all this stuff, but they don't have, they don't have on-campus facilities like everybody else does. They don't have all these things, and they're working on it, and it's coming. But I do, and I've said this a lot on the show, them playing in the Dolphin Stadium, I mean, that's all well and good, but even as NFL stadiums go, that's not one of the better ones. And it took away their place.
Oh, no.
Because that's
no question.
they're very clearly guests at Miami, like, or at the Dolphins, at Sun Life or Hard Rock, whatever it is. It's been like 1,000 different things at Hard Rock Stadium. That's where they are. They're guests there, as opposed to the Orange Bowl. Everybody else who played there was an unwelcome guest. And when it got loud and live at the Orange Bowl, that was one of the toughest places to play in the country, and they have not had that since they knocked that building down.
It's in downtown Miami. It was intimidating. The team intimidated you.
The neighborhood was like, I mean, it was like all that. You're in there, and you're already going intense. Your car's you had to pay $20 to park, and then you had to pay $40.
Well, imagine what that would have looked like with a Copa America game if they had held it at the
oh dear God,
at the old place.
Yeah. So all of those things, right? All those things, they don't have that. And we've had Manny Navarro on many times on the show, and we asked him, what's the likelihood of them getting an on-campus stadium that's theirs, that's their stadium? And he said, it's the best idea, but it's unlikely.
Yeah.
Because there's so much real, again, you're going to have to buy a lot of really expensive real estate in Miami, too, to do it.
Well, yeah, and do they have money? Does the University do they not have an endowment and money base?
They do. It's just like they had a president for a long time that was like, no, we're going to lean into our elite academic status. And the football program, the athletic department were like, we're all behind that. But you understand that, people know about us because of these other things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the attitude and the mentality that We're Miami is still very much present. I don't think you have to look very long online to find that. But I don't know. That's just my comment was just kind of random just because I just sit there and I hear all of these schools being rifled through, and Miami just kind of comes and goes like it's just any other number of schools, which is for somebody who grew up in a period where they were very much not just one of another bunch of schools. It's just a statement to sort of where they are. Now, they could always, for this year, for example, you went out and you got Cam Ward and you got Damian Martinez and you load it up, and maybe they'll be really good and make a lot of waves, but in terms of just the attractiveness level, it's not the Canes and the U and all that. It's like, it's a small private school that doesn't have their own stadium and not a huge following and this and that you start to break down. And, it doesn't seem like just a slam dunk of where they end up in the big picture of things. So that's just interesting, especially given where they've always sort of been in my mind in the hierarchy of college football.
All right, very good point, because I didn't think of it that way. And then you're right. You start thinking about Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina State, Louisville, maybe Pitt. It all just depends on what you're looking for. UT parking. Let's say it's a 72-team Super League with the relegation of the bottom 10 teams in terms of wins and losses. I don't think Texas or Bama would ever have to worry about that, but Colorado, Vandy, et cetera, would.
Yeah. Well, this is why when the relegation model was proposed, it was the teams that are outside of that. It would not be any of the power conference teams, because there's no way that a team like Colorado, who is 2 years removed from one of the worst seasons in the history of FBS football for a power conference team, would be like, no, we're not going back there.
Yeah, I know rosters are year to year, and you can lose 70 guys and still have an 85-man roster by the time the season rolls around. Like, Dion's not to that extreme, but close enough to where you can flip over half a roster and do that in a few months' time. But I just think there's too many other questions when you start talking about the promotion and relegation thing. I get that it works really well in soccer. I had a buddy who taught me all about Champions League and relegation and how all sorts of different things work. And I started watching Welcome to Wrexham last year, and that certainly rekindled a lot of the conversations I used to have in my head about so how does this work? You have to meet a certain threshold, and if you don't, then you fight for your life to stay in the league. It's all very, very interesting. And for soccer, it works incredibly well. I just don't know that it's an apples-to-apples thing for college football, because I don't know how college football programs can really, on a year-to-year or couple of years basis, be able to tell their donors, donate this money. We might get back to the top league, but we might. I just don't think that anybody who's already in the SEC or already in the Big Ten is going to put that up for even a risk. even with all the inherent advantages they have, I don't think anybody is going to say, like, yeah, let's put ourselves on the potential chopping block. I think that they would protect each other rather than go down that route. And it would be, if you ever got to that point, I do think it would be more of like the Boise States and UNLV or, programs like that would be fighting to get in and not, or fighting to get in and stay in, as opposed to, a Rutgers or the typical teams that we always mention when we talk about those don't belong here if you're going to do it this way. I just don't think they're risk losing their spots, and it's a fun idea, but there's just a lot of complications with that.
You even the two power conferences, the big ones, the Big Ten and the SEC, they've always protected their own. The Big Ten maybe not as much as the SEC. But they would have to lose some people to that. They would absolutely, like Vanderbilt would be in danger at times, whether it's South Carolina or Mississippi State. Arkansas right now, they've slipped. In the Big Ten, anyone like Nebraska, Minnesota, Rutgers, those schools.
I mean, it sounds exciting that Nebraska is on the 5-yard line and needing to score a touchdown, or else not only do they lose and not make a bowl game, but they fall to the lower level league, and they don't even play like the Big Ten for the next year or two. But there's just so many complications with that.
They would play those games, but they wouldn't be eligible for the.
No, you'd be out.
You'd be out of the league.
They would drop out of the Big Ten.
They start winning more.
They would drop out of the Big Ten.
It's not realistic.
And then they're playing a Sun Belt schedule.
And then they have to win.
They've lost to Troy and whoever.
But then they'd have to win that next year in a different schedule against different teams that are also fighting for that, to then be one of like the top, let's say 2 or 3, however it would set up.
Like the Corn Ferry Tour in golf.
To then get in. It's like that. And so it's fun. And the premise that I just set up for you of like, not only is this like your season on the line, but your future is on the line. Like, you fall out of the Big Ten if you don't score here. That would make it really interesting for a lot of fans across the country, but I just don't know that vibes with the college football setup the way that it is right now. Although I totally understand where people are coming from with that. I just don't think that conferences are going to even put up their teams for that possibility of, Nebraska's might not even be in this league because they didn't win enough games type of a thing. I just think that's risking too much.
Retired stockbroker, talking to Kim Coulter, I don't trust anyone. 72 divided by 4, 16, or 64, but what 3 need to go? Vanderbilt, Wake Forest, and Duke ain't losing those 3 huge privates, but competition gets a backseat. I hate this blank.
Yeah.
All right, when we come back at the top of the 5 o'clock hour, we'll hear from Taz Williams, the wide receiver from Red Oak, a pretty good story. Let's go, Garrett, to a couple of more stories that we didn't get to. We will have Ralph Russo from Associated Press covers college football at the bottom of the 5 o'clock hour. Greg Sankey on the conference name of the Southeastern Conference. This makes absolute a lot of sense. We're the one conference at this level where the name still means something. The southeastern part of the United States where we can expand, or where we expanded, we actually restored, and they did. They restored historic rivalries, did not dump them.
Oh, but
after they broke one up the first time and they brought it back, like, hey, listen, is that him apologizing?
Yeah, A&M, Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri. That's a long time.
Hey, Mizzou and Kansas, border war over. Yeah. And he's like, we restored historic rivalries. I mean, we broke them first, but I did have the decency to repair it.
How many teams in the Big Ten?
18.
How many in the Big 12?
16.
All right. And the Pac-12 has 2.
And the Atlantic Coast Conference has now teams in Texas and the Pacific Coast.
By the way, did y'all see the Pac-12 all preseason team?
No, I did not.
No, I just wondered if there was one, because it would just be funny to see like 2 teams fill out the entire all preseason team.
Yeah. Missouri's more in the Midwest, right, than they are the Southeast.
Yeah, I mean, they are. Oklahoma's not the Southeast. Texas is arguably the Southwest, but you can see where they're doing that. But he says all that. We're all locked in here in the Southeast, traditional rivalries, but I don't want Clemson, South Carolina, even though that checks both boxes. I don't want Florida, Florida State. Okay, sure you don't.
All right.
Sure you don't. By the way, do you see what his exact quote was? I'm not a recruiter.
Yeah.
That was his exact quote.
That was a shot at you, Omar.
He said, I am not a recruiter when talking and being asked about expansion. So he didn't say we're not interested. He basically said, I'm not a recruiter. He told other reporters that they had fielded calls from more than Texas and Oklahoma. Yep. He also said that. And he just basically said he was avoiding litigation. So read into all that how you will. But he did anything but say, we're happy where we are. We're not. I mean, he did say that, but he didn't say that as put a lid on it. We're done entirely, and I'm not even going to listen to anything else.
Sometimes when he talks, he's always looking at taking a pot shot at Yormark.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, and
which I think is hilarious. That Yormark at times he may not think, but gets a little bit under his skin.
Why should he bother?
Yeah. Okay.
Why should he bother?
Harold Perkins of LSU, who disappeared. Garrett. How good was Harold Perkins last year?
Last year, not very. The year before, he was elite.
The year before, had he been eligible to come in and be drafted, would have been a first-round pick.
Mm-hmm.
Still might end up that way, but he, disappeared. I don't know if they changed what he was doing or what.
Yeah, they moved him to the
He's Micah
linebacker.
Parsons for them,
It's
right?
one of the biggest stories in college football is his usage or the way that they did not use him properly.
He was asked earlier today at SEC Media Days about Oklahoma linebacker Danny Stutzman, who's a pretty good player. Who is that?
Fair question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to take that as a shot, I guess you can. I don't feel any type of way about Harold Perkins not knowing who Danny Stutzman is. I mean, Danny Stutzman's a good player, but I don't.
He's not.
I don't think he's all world, and I also don't know why Harold Perkins in particular would, have to know who that guy is. So. Yeah, I mean, that seems like a pretty innocuous, pretty innocent quote, actually. Yeah, but, I mean, hopefully Danny Stutzman can let him know and has a good enough year to where everybody knows who he is afterwards.
More interesting thing I thought Harold Perkins said was he was committed to A&M for a very long time and then decommitted and went to LSU. And they asked him why he did that. And I think he was right in this and said because the development was going to be better at LSU, and now Brian Kelly's in charge, and that – took a hit. It veered off the road last year, his development.
Because of Brian Kelly?
Well, because of the Brian Kelly and his system. Whatever they did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ultimately on Brian Kelly because at no point did he go, hey, this guy who hit every quarterback right in the face last year, why is he not doing that now? Yeah. And now, Brian Baker's the defensive coordinator. That's his biggest mission, and I'm sure he'll accomplish it because he's pretty darn good at his job.
I also want this quote. We don't have to put it up unless you have it. The Lane Kiffin quote on his dad, Monty. I really feel like there's very few superheroes, very few great ones that loved everyone, tried to help everyone. They came in touch with me forever. Whether you were big or small, that was Monty Kiffin, who, of course, passed away at the end, sometime in the middle to the end of last week. When we come back, he's been, as Baylor has been on this pretty nice run with recruiting, Taz Williams of Red Oak High School. You even heard earlier Carter Yates, who was covering his signing or his, announcement, had no clue that Baylor was in the discussion. Our Grayson Grundhafer knew because he talked about it with us on Friday. Taz Williams Jr. next on 365 Sports.
Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco. Kicking off July with some smoking hot deals, like a 2023 Chevrolet Suburban High Country 4-wheel drive for $68,885 and 45 cents. 2020 Jeep Rubicon. These are pre-owned cars that are marvelous. Officially trail rated to go anywhere, do anything with leather seats for only $41,785. How about the 2022 Dodge Charger SRT, 8 wide body with 4,000 miles on it, $87,750. Speed you want? How about this 2020 Chevrolet Camaro SS convertible, one owner car for $36,250. Or they just traded for a smoking hot Ford Mustang Mach 1. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. If you want pre-owned and you want speed, come and look at what they have. The last Dodge Challenger Hellcats left in captivity. Ted Teague, the CEO and general manager, a great staff. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
Our good friend Brad Boozer, Boozer's Jewelers here at 365 Sports. Now, Brad, people who watch and listen to our show know I'm a double-time customer for you, engagement ring and wedding band, and you guys do that great, but that's not all you do at Boozer's Jewelers.
Absolutely, and I always like to say, it's a new year. It's a great way to start the year out. Go through your old jewelry. Go through your wife's jewelry box. Go through anything you're maybe not wearing, something that's broken, something that you're not using. We do a massive amount of custom work. We can take your old jewelry, old diamonds, old watches, and we can convert it into something special for you and make a one-of-a-kind piece of jewelry. And if that's not something you're interested in, a great thing is we can turn that into cash. So we buy gold, we buy diamonds, we'll buy Rolex watches, any kind of heirloom jewelry, anything that's maybe passed down to you.
Boozer's Jewelers, where do they find you, Brad?
We're at 1025 North Valley Mills Drive, right on the corner of Lake Air Drive and Valley Mills with the big clock on the corner.
Bambi SQ, what is the number one reason or two or three reasons, Bambi, that people should contact House of Travel?
As a travel agency local here in Waco, we can take care of all your bookings, your payments, answer your questions, help you when there are issues or problems, things that may come up that you don't know what to do or how to fix them. People don't realize we don't charge a fee for what we do. It doesn't cost you extra to use a travel agent. We're just here. We get paid by the tour companies and the cruise lines to represent them. But you have an expert on your side that's here and local, and you have a name and a face to put together to help you with anything that you may need. Give us a call. We can price things for you. We can help you answer questions. We can make it simple, easy, and one stop.
Your knowledge of all the years you've done this and then spit it back to them or give them options?
Helps us to kind of know a date range, a budget, what your goals are and what you want to see and do on your vacation. And then that helps us to know what to look for, and we can narrow down and help you make the best choices for your vacation so you get the best value. You get exactly what you were hoping for, and making sure that it's taken care of with a carefree, easy, simple for you type vacation. I've been doing this for over 40 years. Every day I learn something new. I experience new situations and things that I can help take care of for people, whether it's just making sure you get the best deals and find the best vacations, or whether it's to solve that problem, like you've got a flight that's being canceled and you don't know what to do. There's weather coming up. Should I cancel my trip next week because of the hurricane? Those are things that we take care of and you don't have to worry about. You've got somebody that you can rely on that you know is an expert, knows what we're doing, have been doing this for a long time, so that you're not questioning, okay, does the person on the other end of the phone really understand what I'm asking or know how to find those deals? You've got an expert, and we are here to take care of that.
For more information, go to houseoftravelwaco.com.
This is 365 Sports.
The Sikkim 365 app is brought to you by Allen Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. Come by, let's be friends.
All right, here we go, this 5 o'clock hour. Taz Williams from Red Oak High School. Great story behind where he grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, committed to Dave Aranda and Baylor over the weekend, and it was a surprise for some that had not been paying attention. And he joins us now. Craig Smoke, Paul Catalina, David Smoke on 365 Sports. Taz, thanks for your time. What has it been like for you since you made the announcement that you were going to Baylor?
It's been great. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's been great. I already know a couple people on the team, a couple commits already. Just been able to finally settle down a little bit and feel comfortable with my decision, and now I can move on with the process, and just I'm getting one step closer to my goals.
Taz, you none of your social media or anything, like it came out of nowhere for most people, but did it come out of nowhere for you when you're interested in Baylor, or was this something that you'd always kind of had in the back of your mind before you decided?
No, so the interest has always been there. Baylor was, I think they were my 5th offer, and so that was like, they were around since the beginning. And I've been talking to them ever since, like I got the offer, and then once Coach Hall got there, Coach Hall really made a push. Coach Hall, Coach Baker, Coach Aranda, those three really made a push, especially Coach Hall. He made sure he made me feel like a priority. I trust Coach Hall. When he was at SMU, he was still, he had faith in me, and I still had trust in him. And then when he got to Baylor, it just made everything much easier. He still showed love, and we just went from there. And then the commitment came, and I said, yeah, I trust Coach Hall. I like everything. I like Coach Baylor's offense. And they checked every box.
Taz Williams, Red Oak High School, now with us on the Richard Carr Buick GMC hotline. Craig?
Taz, you just mentioned your relationship there with Keenan Hall. What about Dave Aranda? What's that been like to talk to him? How much have you talked to him? And just obviously a unique guy, a unique individual. What were your thoughts on him?
I like Coach Aranda a lot. He's different compared to like a lot of different head coaches. Everybody's different in their own ways. But I like Coach Aranda. I like his approach to the game, how he approaches things. And just being able to speak with him in person, I see he's a really chill dude. I just can't wait to be coached by him.
How much do you realize or understand the momentum that Baylor's had the last week or two with Kamarion Morgan, and others? Do you kind of get the feeling that this was something that Baylor fans have been just thirsty for some sort of good news on the recruiting trail?
I wouldn't say thirsty. That's a little pushing it. But I feel like this is what Waco needed a little bit. Just want to get back to how y'all were when I had RG3 there. Just want to get y'all back to where y'all were. And K3, he's one of my best friends. Kamarion Morgan is one of my best friends. So he also played a role in that too. So
your friendship with Kamarion, right? It goes back to where both of you were at Red Oak ISD in 8th grade?
Yes, sir.
So what did you guys talk about as far as the possibility of did you ever think you would be on the same football team later on?
We talked about it like when we first started getting offers, started blowing up a little bit, started getting recognized. We talked about it a little bit, but it was like everybody's process is different. So we couldn't really like say they were going to the same school. It just something that happened. God's timing is I can't say God just made that the main goal, made us play for the same team again. Because obviously he transferred out for his senior year. Coming up, he transferred. And when we playing college together again. So it's something we were talking about for a while. Now it's finally going to happen.
Taz, what would you, how would you describe the recruiting process? I mean, as heavily offered as you were, I mean, I think I've read one of the most, if not the most offered player in the entire state of Texas, which is just crazy. But how would you describe the roller coaster? And I could tell you do sense a little bit of relief, but just what's that process been like compared to what you thought it was going to be like heading into it?
I'm going to start off what I thought it was going to be. I didn't know how it was going to be. I thought I was going to just have a couple offers, pick a school, it was going to be the end. I didn't think I was going to be the most offered receiver in the country, the most offered player in Texas. I want to thank God for that. But I don't know. It's crazy. But the recruiting process, it's been a little ups and downs. You know, everybody goes through ups and downs in life. But the process, it's been a lot mentally and physically. You got to go to all these schools. You got to sacrifice, stay home with your family, training. It's like business for real. So you got to put business first. You got to do what's best for you to get you right or get you in the right position. So.
You grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Is your uncle, and what is, I believe, the uncle's relationship with the great Aaron Donald?
Yes, sir.
What was that relationship?
So I started out with my uncle. He'd been training for a long time. When I was 5 years old, that's when he I was riding. So I used to teach at my school when I was in, I think it was kindergarten, and he would train. I didn't know that. And then he would train, he had dudes around, and then that's when I started playing football. I was around 5 years old. And then he took me under his wing a little bit when I was back in Pittsburgh. And then he just grew. And then he started training Aaron Donald since he was in high school, if I'm correct. I don't remember the exact time, but I know he was training him for a long time. Then Aaron Donald became one of the best in the league. And you probably seen the crazy video of him training with knives. Yeah, that's my uncle. He does crazy stuff like that. But
yeah, I just saw a video of Aaron Donald doing shrugs today. It was ridiculous, and he's retired.
Yeah.
But okay, so I'm going to line up. If I'm the cornerback across from you, and you can't see me, so you don't have a realistic vision of how intimidating this would be for you, Taz. But I'm going to line up across from you as a cornerback.
Okay.
What am I in for on any given play?
That's a good question. Your head is going to be spinning. You're going to be like, I don't know what to do, because I can run past you, through you, around you. I can make you go the opposite direction. There's so many things I could do with my game. So it's like there's nothing you can really stop. You try to stop one thing, I got other stuff that's in my bag that I could pull out and I could do. So like it's just gonna be like I play mind games at the corner, so like I'm gonna win that all the time.
So Taz, you have had injuries before track and field season. I feel like as many offers and the high level offers you have, and will probably some of them keep coming in no matter the commitment, just because of the way it works. How many more would you have had you been healthy and run even better times in track and field, or would that have made a difference?
If I would have ran track, or I did a little bit, but if I didn't get hurt the last couple of years, I never thought about that. I feel like I would have a little less offers because I feel like around that time people would see like what I really had, and then some schools would back off, and some schools would come with me strong. So I feel like I would have a little less just because people see more. But it could be different for everybody else. Cause I say that like everybody's different, but for me, I feel like I would have less.
So who did you call? How did that go down Sunday? Oh, no, you were on television, weren't you? Or like on some video when you made the commitment?
Tell us about how you decided to commit the way that you did with the whole setup and just kind of where all those ideas came from.
So with me, I like to be different. If you see me, my hair is always a different color, always braided different. I like to be different for everybody else. Everybody does the hat stuff. I had the hats out there, and I had different hats. I had bucket hats. That's a little different. I wanted people to think I was doing that, and then obviously pulled the spinning wheel out from behind the backdrop. And it's just something different that nobody's seen or has done before, to my knowledge. And the night before, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to Baylor. They checked every box. I'm like, there's no doubt. The trust. I feel like we're gonna build a great class, a 25 class. I feel like we're building. So I'm like, yeah, there's no doubt in my mind I'm not going to Baylor. My Baylor is the school I'm going to. Then I end up announcing the next day, let everybody know, through everybody for a loop.
Well, it's cool, man. It was definitely different, like you said, and your own kind of punctuation on a decision. Just what was that sense of relief right afterwards, or I guess maybe even the night before, just that peace of mind? Can you even describe what that feels like?
It felt great because I could finally stop thinking about, I don't know what school to pick. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's a good fit. Now I found a great fit, great school. So now I can finally relax. Not relax. I can relax a little bit and just focus on the season and go win the state championship.
You went to a high school. No, you moved. How old were you when you left Pittsburgh to come down to Dallas-Fort Worth?
I was 11 years old.
Okay. But the high school you would have attended have names that have been there: Rob Gronkowski, Miles Sanders, Jason Taylor, and that is that right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Wow. That's got a pedigree there from where you would have been. So I asked your dad, I talked to your dad a little bit earlier today just to get a little background on you for the interview, and I said, have you ever been – go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, your dad Taz as well, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to know where does that come from? Where does the name come from within the family?
So both our names are originally Montez. His name is spelled M-O-N-T-E-Z. Mine is spelled M-O-N-T-A-Z, but we both go by Taz.
Okay.
So he told me the story. He was like, he didn't like the way people pronounce his name. So he was like, he didn't want me to go through that. So he named me Montez with an A. And then I really don't like Montez. He don't like it either, so he just put flat by Taz.
He named you that, though. He didn't like it. He named you. So I asked him, I said, any kind of adversity? He brought up the fact that you've tweaked been injured slightly before track, whatever. But he said, really, the adversity is the fact that you moved 1,300 miles from where you grew up in Pittsburgh, where you would have been a star up there, into Texas. How was that, the transition for doing that, and how you got through that?
I ain't gonna lie to you. At first, I was against it all. I didn't want to leave. I'm 11 years old. I didn't want to leave, especially going to the other side of the country almost. Going to a whole different state outside Texas is going to be sand roads. I'm going to see sand dunes, tumbleweed, horses. Then we came because my aunt, she was actually staying out here. When we came, we stayed with her for a little bit. I'm like, okay, I kind of like the city. It's bigger. The vibe I feel happy here. compared to back in my hometown. I just felt like my energy just felt way better. And then we ended up moving down here. Had to leave everything behind. It was like a fresh start. My football team. I played for YU Yellow Jackets. Got a whole bunch of dudes on there. I was playing D1 football right now. My head coach, or my coach, the owner, he was Keith Lee was my owner of the Little League team. So just moving and just having to adapt to the Texas ball, it made me better because it was so many bigger dudes. Where I'm from, it's like we had a weight limit. You had to weigh in before every game. Then I came down here, I see linemen that's 200, 300 pounds already. I'm 11 years old. And I got to run away from them. I'm like, oh, this is like real football down here. Then, like my mind, like I'm very competitive. So it's like I want to be the best at everything. And it just pushed me. And my pops, he's like that too. So he pushed me too.
And Margin Hooks, who's a Waco native, then went to BYU, guy we've had on the show before. Have you been training with him?
Yes, I've been training with him actually since I was in 8th grade.
Wow, okay. So there's a connection there. He played high school ball, was a hell of a player here in Waco. Now, you're away from football, do you ever raise your voice very often?
Not really. Only if like I'm on a game or something. That's it.
Right.
Not really.
So what is it about when the lights come on and you're in a game that you kind of almost become a different personality, like somebody that gets incredibly intense? I'm not saying you scream, but it seemed like you're night and day once a game is about to start.
Yeah. I feel like that's two different personalities. Like I've been like receiver documentary that just dropped, or the thing that dropped on Netflix about the receivers. I feel like I'm Justin Jefferson, like a little bit, because he got two different personalities. You're two different people, one off the field and then the person on the field. Like on the field, it's like something that's totally different from me off the field. Like I just care, I have the passion, I love the game. So of course I'm put my all into it. I want to see every emotion, tear, blood, sweat, everything.
I was told that you're a pretty big prankster.
Who told you that?
I don't give up my sources.
Yeah, I love pranks.
What like just silly kind of things just to kind of have fun?
Yeah, that's what I used to do.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I used to watch like magic tricks and the best pranks to do on YouTube all the time. And I'll go do them with my parents, my grandma, my siblings. I'll just laugh.
And you have a pretty good following on TikTok and Instagram, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How big?
TikTok, I'm close to 300,000. And Instagram, what am I, like 55,000 or something like that?
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, last thing. When you did make the commitment, what was the reaction? Did you call anybody at Baylor, or did they just start blowing up your phone?
So when I did it, nobody knew. And I'm getting interviewed, and then Coach Aranda called me. I said, hold on, pause the interview. I got to answer this call. Because like, I couldn't miss this call. I seen it because everybody was calling my phone. I'm like, it was just a regular call. And then I seen it pop up on my Apple Watch. I told him, stop the interview. I got to answer this. Talked to him. He was ecstatic. Coach Baker, he was ecstatic. He was happy. Coach Hall was happy. Coach Spav. So I made a great choice. And I'm ready to just get to work next year.
Well, and there aren't as many sand dunes and tumbleweeds as you thought in the state of Texas as you're right up the road from us in Red Oak. We got to go right through it on the way up into Dallas from Waco, so you're not that far away. Taz, congratulations on your decision. Enjoy time. I know you're getting ready to I think your dad said you guys are going to go on vacation for a little bit, get away, and enjoy that. Now, your decision is made. Enjoy it. We look forward to talking to you again down the road.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Taz Williams from Red Oak High School. You know what they're I don't know what they call themselves, the Rohawks. That's one of their like promotional. That's the nickname of where I went to school at Randolph, the Randolph Rohawks, but that was their true mascot. So Red Oak wide receiver Taz Williams, more offers than most anybody at a wide receiver in the country. It's pretty amazing at his story. When we come back, Ralph Russo, Associated Press, some college football topics we'll get to with him. This is 365 Sports. If you wouldn't mind, please click the like and subscribe button if you haven't already. And we're back in a moment with Ralph Russo on 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on for your automotive needs right now, celebrating American quality and American value. during the red, white, and blue sale at Richard Carr. Right now, you can save $9,000 on all 2024 GMC Sierra SLT trucks in stock with a 2010 or newer trade-in. You can find plenty of Sierra trucks under $40K right now over at Richard Carr, even if you don't take advantage of that $9,000 off with your 22 or newer trade-in. You can find all the savings on GMC Sierras and more with the red, white, and blue tags on all cars on the lot. But the GMC Sierra brings professional-grade power mixed with first-class luxury interior and a multi-pro tailgate. It is the best truck on the road, and Richard Carr is loaded up with GMC Sierras right now, so take great advantage of their great deals during this savings event. Also, a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks as well. If you're looking to go a different route, 100 highly inspected used cars and trucks, all special price during the red, white, and blue tag sale. And with a dozen lenders to choose from, they get credit approved when others can't. 100% credit approval is always the goal. So check out the GMC Sierras and the great deals going on right now. Check out their lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks. Check out the website for more information. For 25 years in Central Texas, they've been the people you can count on for your automotive needs. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6, the Imperial exit.
It was broad daylight. I stepped into a gas station for 5 minutes to grab a snack, and just like that, my car was broken into. They made out like a bandit. My laptop, my phone, everything. I called my agent to see what could be done, and he restored my faith in humanity. My claim was processed so quickly, and I was able to recover my losses.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
Thank you for calling your local Marco's Pizza. We're turning up the heat with our new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Fresh, house-made dough is topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers. At only $5.99, this limited-time product is a hot deal. Add it to your order while you can. A Marco's team member will be with you shortly.
Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it, and that offer on the Reaper Cheesy Bread is available right now at any of the 5 Marco's Pizza locations in Waco, including Belmead, China Spring, Robinson, Woodway, and Hewitt. Order online at marcos.com. Call for a pickup or delivery. Marco's Pizza is turning up the heat with their all-new Reaper Cheesy Bread with fresh, hot, house-made dough topped with a spicy cheese blend infused with jalapeno, habanero, and Carolina Reaper peppers, and only $5.99 and for a limited time only. Marco's Pizza, the fastest-growing pizza brand in America. 5 locations in Waco, and the new Reaper Cheesy Bread. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at AllianceBankTexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Samantha Duvall, TexasBeefHouse.com. From their pasture to your plate, premium quality Texas farm-raised beef. Samantha, you've had more and more online auctions, and you have another one coming up in the middle of this month.
On July 17th, that will open our next steak auction, and it closes the next day on July 18th. About 48 hours of tomahawk, New York strip, flat iron, ground beef, both Angus and Wagyu. It's a lot of fun to get on. You just get on to bidonbeef.com, create an account, and it'll walk you through all the steps that you have to do in order to bid. Everything ships for free nationwide in the lower 48 states.
The flat iron steak to me is underrated. Fajitas, it tastes so good.
The flat iron is my absolute favorite. And then, of course, your tomahawk, that's just a showstopper. It's something exciting to put on the grill for everybody to see. Each steak is about anywhere from 3 to 4 pounds. I'm telling you what, it'll feed pretty much a whole family. A 4-pound tomahawk feeds the 6 of us.
The 48 states ship free. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Again, premium quality Texas farm-raised beef, Wagyu, Angus. It is amazing. July 17th and 18th, tomahawk, New York strip, flat iron, ground beef, Angus, and Wagyu. You really are doing these auctions more and more frequently.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of great feedback. A lot of people love to get online. The ending is what we call a horse race finish. So at 6 p.m. when the auction ends, If anybody has been bidding in that last 2 minutes, it keeps the auction open for 2 more minutes, and that continues until all bidding has stopped. So that's kind of the exciting thing to watch at the very end is, the timer reset because people are getting on there and they're making sure that they're getting that lot that they want. So this is your best bet to get the best price. And it's a price that you want to pay, not what we're setting the price. And you're getting it in bulk. So you're getting more than just one package of steaks. You're getting, depending on which lot, anywhere from 4 to 8 packages of steaks.
Go to TexasBeefHouse.com, July 17th and 18th, the auction. And you can find much more information. Bidonbeef.com. And don't forget the discount if you put hashtag Sick'em365.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend's Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
Ralph Russo, Associated Press. He's up in Dallas and Fort Worth, has been covering the first of 4 days of the SEC, and always love to talk college football with him. Ralph, the game itself, the landscape, the changes, so many different things that have happened in the last 4 years. Does it make the game better because it was already pretty good in the first place?
I don't know if it makes it on the field significantly worse. How about that? I don't know if it's going to make it that much better, but I also know that the thing that bails out college sports is all the dysfunction tends to be Monday through Friday, not figuratively, right? And then on Saturdays, Thursday nights and Friday nights as well, but on Saturdays, all the dysfunction goes away and the games are still awesome. And the product is still awesome, and the players are better than ever. And I think we can dig into a little bit of the transfer portal and NIL and what that means on the field, and maybe that redistributes some talent and sins and it gives us a little more parity that makes the sport a little more interesting. We haven't seen a ton of evidence of that, but it's small sample size, so we don't know if those are trends. But as of right now, I keep going back to this idea of if as much as they try to screw up college football, Saturdays are awesome. And I think that ultimately ends up being the thing that will bail out all the incompetence in the management of college football, is the fact that people love it. It's really awesome. It's exciting and the games are great. So just don't screw it up so much from Monday through Friday that we can't have Saturdays.
Ralph, one of the things that's, they've tried to screw up, obviously, is realignment. I mean, and again, it's good, it's bad, and, there's all these things in between on it. But the latest stories are about Florida State and Clemson, their fight with the ACC. What's a reasonable timetable in your mind for a decision on anything when it comes to that?
So if you want to just go by what it was going on in the courts, I mean, you got to remember, Florida State, Clemson are suing the ACC, and the ACC is suing both of those schools back. And what we have gotten through so far with those cases is really just about logistics, where the cases should be heard. There are multiple cases. Should any of them be dropped? Should one case defer to another? So in some ways, we're still at the starting point of all this stuff as far as the courts are concerned. I think if you wanted to look at what is the fastest this could play out, I think there's a timetable that again, this is very speculative, that Clemson and Florida State could conceivably on August 15th notify the ACC and say, we are leaving. We are giving our 1 year notice. Now, I don't know if that means anything, right? I mean, you still have all kinds of contracts that bind them, but it might be their way of sort of starting a process that they hope will end in some kind of negotiated settlement, and then they get out. There's also a very real chance that is crazy too fast, that is way overshooting it. So I think one scenario could be, hey man, maybe they're in a new conference by August of 2025. I don't know if that's realistic. I think if you're the most optimistic, quote unquote optimistic of Florida State fans, and you're really looking to get out, you're hoping that that's the timetable. But there's also a timeline here that could stretch out years if this thing really does. If the ACC says, no, man, we're digging in here and we're dragging your butts all the way through the court process here. Conceivably, this thing could last years.
Ralph, that was obviously something that tied in a bit to SEC Media Days, just all of the stuff that's stirred up and being talked about and speculated about with FSU and Clemson. And would they have a spot in the SEC? Greg Sankey seemed pretty adamantly and prepared for that kind of question, saying that they like 16. But I guess he can't really say anything other than that right now, can he? And just how did you sort of take those comments?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the point, right? They can't get entangled in in what's going on in other conferences because, quite frankly, it would drag them into court, right? They would suddenly become liable as people who are trying to interfere with contracts with us. So they can't be involved in that. And Sankey is really cautious about not making very clear that they are not recruiting, right? They are not recruiters in this position. But I think you can kind of tell his frustration with the fact that this is going on, right? He talked about how he's paying attention, and of course he has to pay attention because he pays attention to everything in college sports. But this bit of uncertainty, you could tell it frustrates him because he understands that this is a topic that tends to fuel speculation. So if there's any kind of instability in another conference, all of a sudden that creates swirls of speculation and rumors, and then he has to address that. So instability anywhere tends to create instability everywhere. And I think after 3 really long years of realignment, I think a lot of people are just dying to have peace when it comes to that part of college football. And we just can't seem to get there, even though, again, things are certainly far more peaceful this year than they have been the last 3 when it comes to realignment. But that ACC piece is still showing some possible fractures.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, as much as it's helped with our growth because of what happened in the summer of 21 Texas OU SEC. Yeah, we brought up the Florida State Clemson earlier today. But it would be nice just to have a normal, midsummer until the championship game. It would be so nice. I don't know if we ever will do that again.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like as someone who has really grinded through, and trust me, nobody needs to have any sympathy for me. I have a great job. Mm-hmm. But the last few years have been a real grind because there really haven't been an off season. There's been so much between realignment and NCAA issues and court cases, NIL. There's been so much off the field stuff. It's really packed the off season. This year, there's still a lot going on, but it's not nearly as much as the last couple. And I think that with the playoff in place and all these other conferences now have their structures and their new teams in, I think there's this sense of okay, we're finally getting to the point where we might have, as you said, some normalcy in the off season, and we might be steering clear of some of this realignment. Here's the one thing about realignment. I don't know if it's necessarily been good for college sports. In fact, I'm pretty sure it hasn't been generally, but here's how they get you, Smokey. You look at the schedules, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, as much as we've complained and you complain and you whine and you're like, oh, it's tearing apart rivalries, it's doing this and doing that. And then you see, Texas at Georgia. And I think that's the game this year. Even maybe it's Georgia at Texas. But you see Texas, Georgia, and you see Ohio State, Oregon. And you're like, oh, wow, that looks pretty good.
Absolutely.
That's how realignment gets you. Again, I don't think it's been good for the sport, but it will create some really interesting conferences and conference races and really, really cool games.
I've always thought about, you were talking about the schedule, when you have a big time, early September non-conference game, whether it's from somebody like USC playing Penn State or last year Alabama, Texas, among others, I don't know if it ever gets much better than that until you get to that November time period when you start to get a lot of the rivalries, with the exception of Texas and OU in October.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. I do, I think the newness of the season, we're all super excited right when the season starts, and then you have these monster teams. And I think some years that schedule looks a little better than others. In fact, just to bring up the point, like there's not a lot of them this year. There's not a lot of those really high profile. Now there's some. Texas and Michigan play, USC and LSU play. So I don't want to shortchange it completely. But I don't know if this would necessarily be like the best year for some of those non-conference matchups. Alabama, Wisconsin, super interesting only because they have to actually go to Wisconsin.
Yes.
And that's always cool. And that's cool too. It seems like we're moving away from those neutral site games more and more. And I think the bigger question is, as these conferences expand and become more arduous and rigorous within the conference, and maybe the SEC then adds a ninth conference game, which I think a lot of people think they might in the coming years. Does the college football players expanding to 12 teams motivate teams to take more risks out of conference and schedule some of those tough games? Or do they say, hey, I don't know if we really need that extra, tough non-conference game. We already play a really tough conference schedule. And do we get less of them? So the future of those marquee games, I don't want to say they're in doubt, but there's an uncertainty about whether we're going to get more of them in the 12-team playoff or less of them because now we have super conference.
Ralph, this just kind of randomly came to me, but do you think Sankey being more of a traditionalist is irked by a guy like Brett Yormark being more of an outsider and a disruptor?
I don't necessarily think irked is the right word. Because from what I've gathered, they've worked together pretty well.
Okay.
And I think Greg appreciates Brett bringing sort of a different perspective to the table. I will definitely tell you, I don't think they're not going to operate the same way, right? I mean, you see Yormark, talking about things, though he kind of ducked the subject a little bit when directly asked about private equity and some creative things the Big 12 is going to go about doing. And the fact that the Big 12 generally, they aggressively went after the Pac-12 teams. They kind of, insinuated they would be in the market for other teams, with an eye towards the ACC. So yes, it's a very different approach. But I do get the sense that they work together pretty well. So, maybe Greg wouldn't sign off on the way Brett works, but I think they seemingly get along okay when they're in the same rooms. How about that?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
They probably respect each other as businessmen, but I do think it seemed like
it's different approaches. Yeah.
Sankey, it's a more of an old school approach. Not that he's not right in the middle of what has changed around with technology, social media, and so much more. So, if in fact at one point in the next 2 to 3 years there becomes what you would consider, and Craig came up with a Super 2, the two alpha conferences, how many teams, in your opinion, of the current 16 of the Big 12 will be included in that?
Wow, that is some kind of question, guys. It's so difficult to answer that because I think that it's beyond just what is a manageable conference, right? It's beyond just can you go to 24? Does that make sense? Does 28 make sense? And you literally have sort of AFC, when you have an expanded version of AFC, NFC. Are you then – the SEC is no longer – and the Big Ten are no longer conferences. They are sort of these separate leagues with a big banner, and then they're cutting those teams into what essentially are mini conferences, right? So maybe there's a new version of the Pac-12, but it's just living under the Big Ten's banner, right? Like a West Coast version of the Big Ten. Just off the top of my head, I find myself thinking, well, if we're really doing that, if the Big Ten and the SEC are really sitting down and just divvying up the board like a game of Risk, like I think Kansas has a place. I think TCU probably has a place. I think UCF has a place. Like, I don't know, like, it might be easier to say who gets left out, right? Does West Virginia have a place there because they're not the perfect geographic fit? It's a small state. Does BYU still have a place there? I'm pretty certain Utah has a place there, and I think the Arizona schools would both have a place. So it's a really hard question. I'm sorry, I'm not necessarily giving you a great answer, but I also think
I didn't give you much of a heads
he
up.
threw you a mystery ball there, so he didn't give you much time to.
But I would also say this. I mean, a part of that, it goes back to sort of where I am with Florida State and Clemson. It's not if the SEC and if this becomes simply an arms race between the SEC and the Big Ten, right? Then yes, of course, Florida State and Clemson will find homes and they will end up in one of those conferences. I think there are some outside factors having to do with the courts and Congress and things and antitrust laws that could constrain further growth from the SEC and the Big Ten that might impact how this stuff plays out. In other words, at a certain point, Congress may say, you know what, you guys want help, you have to stop eating each other alive. You have to stop attacking each other. We want this thing. There's a whole bunch of lawmakers who live in the states that some of those schools that might get left out. So I do wonder if there are if we're just considering like the college sports of it all and how they divide up the board. I think that what we might be missing here is what are the outside factors that might decide the next round of realignment or what becomes of a super league. Like, will a super league be deemed legal? I think is a fair question to ask.
Yep. Great stuff, Ralph. Craig, you have one
final thing for me, since you are from SEC Media Days. Obviously had a day one that was pretty interesting. Not anything crazy, but had Lane Kiffin and South Carolina and LSU and so forth. Tomorrow, Ralph, going to get some of that new flavor though with Oklahoma, along with Georgia, Tennessee, Missouri. Just what are you looking forward to over the next 3 days? And what spikes your interest in terms of what you're expecting to see or want to hear?
Well, I will say this, like, listen, and this is no disrespect to the SEC. They put on a good show, but the SEC Media Days tend to be very much made for TV. So I don't know if me as a print reporter, you get a ton of new information, but I will say this. I think there's a lot of interest in, to me, Oklahoma sort of being a canary in a coal mine for this new super conference layout. And what is success and what do schools look like when they change, when they go from being the biggest fish in a maybe little slightly smaller pond in the Big 12, where the Oklahoma reigned for so long, and now they step into the SEC, and are they still the same type of big dog in the SEC? So now I think that's more than a one-year question, but I have a lot of interest in Oklahoma, frankly, even Tennessee to a certain degree, because they're coming in. And they're with these two new teams coming in. And if you're Tennessee, you're going, well, where do I stand in the pecking order? So to me, that's one of the most interesting parts about this upcoming season is, how do you define success? And what is the sort of the new pecking order in the super conferences? And do certain schools that are used to being closer to the top get nudged to the middle? And what does that mean to those schools, as far as their brands and what exactly, and how they live their lives, right? I don't think Oklahoma fans are signing up for like, yeah, sure, we'll be the sixth best team in the SEC. We'll be happy with being between the fourth and third best team in the SEC. Like, that's not what they're signed up for down in Norman.
That's not in their DNA. There's a reason they've had 100 years of great success, except that first year in Venables, so they'll be fine. Hey, Ralph, great stuff. I know you've been busy. Get a little rest, get a nice dinner, relax tonight. Thank you for your time. Have a great week in Dallas.
Always appreciate it, guys. Thank
Ralph
you.
Russo with us on 365 Sports from the Associated Press.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Oklahoma question is the one that everybody, myself as an Oklahoma fan, has as well, is just, what is success and what does that look like here in the SEC? It is amazing, though, just how much of the benefit of the doubt Texas has been given in regards to this transition, as though it's just a layup that they'll be fine because they're better situated, I understand, heading in. But who'd they lose to last year? They lost to Washington. Who'd they lose to before that?
Oklahoma.
Oh, that's right. It's like Oklahoma beat them last year. We almost forget about that because Texas went on to, go make the playoff. But it's Oklahoma, and I know full well going into this, I've said it many times, that it's not going to be what it was when you were just reigning supreme over the Big 12, like it was a pastime or something. Like it wasn't even that difficult for you. But they're definitely entering a different pool with some sharks in it now, whereas they were one of only a couple of sharks. And so it is going to be different, but it's also Oklahoma football. And so I have a pretty strong belief that they're going to maintain being Oklahoma football. I just don't know that you're going to see, and I don't believe you're going to see as many Heisman, running off as they've had in recent years, or as many conference championships, even though that's kind of slowed down here the last handful of years. But I think they'll be fine in the long run. But that absolutely is deservedly one of the major questions is what is the new reality like for teams like them in this different setup?
Had they joined in 21, it would be the opposite. It would be Oklahoma was ready, and Texas was probably going to take 2 or 3 years. The thing that's the difference, and TCU learned this even though they had pretty good success right away from the Mountain West or whatever it was into the Big 12. It is no different. Oklahoma and Texas have plenty of talent and plenty of depth. But it's the week in and week out grind that you don't know if you're prepared for that. The Big 12 had a lot of teams. They didn't have a lot of name teams, but there was very few times other than Kansas in the last 10 years where you knew you were going to beat that team.
Right.
I mean, you knew Kansas was a win.
Yeah.
There haven't been many, even if a team's 3-9 one year.
Your biggest question mark every year was Texas or Oklahoma, whichever side you were on. The other one was your biggest concern every single year. And then maybe like a K-State worried you a little bit. But for the most part, you thought you were better than everybody.
Well, and then TCU had their run, and Baylor had their run. So it's always been somebody else.
Well, there was always going to be a team that came out of nowhere compared to Texas or Oklahoma.
If you lost a game and then you lose a game in the SEC and the next week you're playing Georgia home or on the road, you're like, damn.
Yeah.
And that's kind of – but by the way, Oklahoma and Texas can look eye to eye with them when it comes to history, tradition, talent, and all that other stuff. That's what's going to be fun to see how that works out.
And vice versa. Because they're not used to looking straight into the eye of everybody. They're looking at each other. And years ago, they looked at Nebraska that way. They looked at A&M, that way, or Missouri or something. Like at least respectfully looked at them as like they were more peer-to-peer. I feel like this last incarnation, though, they weren't looking at TCU or Baylor or even Oklahoma State as though they were on their level. Whereas, now you're walking into a room and there's 6 teams that look dead in the eye and have every right to be able to do so.
They
That'll
should have been
fun.
looking at some of those teams.
Should have, but
because
didn't.
They didn't, and they lost a lot to those teams. That'll be fun to watch the attrition and how that, if it does affect any of the two, either Texas, Oklahoma, or the ones that have to play Texas and Oklahoma, that those are 2 more games on their schedule rather than maybe Mississippi State or Arkansas.
Oh, there's somebody going, y'all just get ready for this. About to go 0-2 against those teams. They're about to lose to both Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know who plays both of them, but yeah.
No, that's exactly right. Paul Catalina's top 5 is just around the corner. I want to talk about Texas Beef House and the Duval family and what they have just outside of Tyler in East Texas. Their beef is raised right there on the ranch. I've been there. Company focuses on resources, developing the best Wagyu genetics, and produces high-quality beef. The family spent the last 2 decades improving the quality of their beef herd. Taste the difference with Texas Beef House. By the way, they have an online auction coming up this week, 17th and 18th. Go to TexasBeefHouse.com, or you can go to bidonbeef.com. Now, the great part about these live auctions that Samantha and Aaron and others have learned about what they do is you can buy as much beef as you want and pay what you want and bid on something, and you might get it rather than what the store is going to tell you this is how much it cost. And we did a poll, what's your favorite steak? And I think 45% of those who answered it out of 60 votes pretty quickly said their favorite steak was ribeye. They have ribeye. Wagyu beef right there in East Texas. Don't forget, if you do order, whether it's a small box, a bundle, you go SICM10. If you use hashtag SICM10, you get 10% off any order over $100. I promise you it is mouthwatering delicious at TexasBeefHouse.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Sup, yo? This is Paul Catalina's Top 5. Golden Boy quarterbacks. Brought to you by Texas Beef House. Please go to TexasBeefHouse.com. Use our promo code SICK'EM10 for 10% off of your order. Today, we're talking Golden Boy QBs. Now, who are these? These are the next wave, the next generation. Some of them played a little. Some of them have played maybe more than a little. Some of them haven't played at all. But these are the next wave of QBs that everybody's excited about. We'll start with number 5. And by no means is this a ranking of how good they are or anything like that, because, as you know, and confirmed by Garrett here in a second, there is no bigger Avery Johnson fan outside of Manhattan, Kansas than Paul Catalina. Love this quarterback, love what he can do, but he is, I'm telling you, this guy has got a great chance to be the face of the Big 12 for the next couple of years. They've got a true sophomore season and a true junior season with him before he's NFL draft eligible. He's the fastest guy on their team. And that's saying a lot because they've got some fast dudes. He is already a leader. You saw what he did in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. You saw what he did in his one start where he scored 4 rushing touchdowns. He's got to get better throwing the ball, obviously. He spent the offseason doing that. This is a Kansas State team that's picked high for a reason, and he is a big part of that reason. Avery Johnson at K-State, the next wave of QBs. And again, I wanted to get my gushing over Avery Johnson out of the way before we talk about some of these other guys. Number 4, Julian Sayin at Ohio State. This is someone who, after spring ball, they're even calling into question like what the depth chart needed to be. Will Howard, Devin Brown, Julian Sayin, Aaron Nolan's there as well, and that's a highly rated quarterback. They're going to have some transfers out of Ohio State, no matter what. But I put Julian Sayin after this because Avery Johnson pushed Will Howard to Ohio State. Now, Will Howard more than likely going to be the starting quarterback all year long at Ohio State. But if there's a young guy who can push him out again in the middle of the season in his last year of eligibility, it might be Julian Sayin. He was the number 1 rated quarterback in the country. He was like the number 4 or 5 overall rated player in the country. This is someone who's probably ready to go pretty early on at Ohio State. And would not be surprised to see him getting some reps in there and maybe even taking over the backup spot if Devin Brown doesn't continue to progress. Although he did progress, and they've heard a lot of things about Devin Brown at Ohio State in the spring game, but we'll see. It would not surprise me to see Julian Sayin be the number 2 quarterback there in Columbus. Number 3, I know most of you have not heard of this guy. He's from, like, I don't know if you've heard of his family. They played in, football. They're good at it. No, you've heard of them. Arch Manning at Texas. So much so that you've got national pundits saying that they think Arch Manning will beat out Quinn Ewers for the starting job eventually at Texas. I think that's premature and ridiculous. If Arch Manning's the starter at Texas, it probably means something really bad happened to Quinn Ewers and he's out for the year, which of course nobody wants. But Quinn Ewers is going to be a first or second round draft pick in this upcoming draft. He's got skills. He keeps getting better. But Arch Manning, obviously the next wave at Texas. Every time he comes into any kind of game, garbage time in a game last year, the spring game, there's buzz around Arch Manning. And so he'll get his shot next year, which would be his redshirt sophomore year. And we'll see where Arch Manning lives then. But this is, I could have honestly put him at number 1 on this list because there's no more hype built around any player in the country than there is around Arch Manning in Austin. And a lot of that's deserved, but we'll see what happens. They've got a great situation there. And he's not antsy to get out. He's committed to Texas, and this is not any kind of, let me go here and then hop to somewhere else. He's going to be the starting quarterback at Texas next year, if not for, any number of reasons this year. But more than likely he sits back, and we'll get to see a little bit of him in some games this year in Austin. Number 2, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma. Garrett called Oklahoma the most underrated team in the SEC earlier on the triple option, and he might be right. And this is part of the reason. Look, he's a redshirt freshman quarterback, or true sophomore. I'm not sure sophomore. He's a sophomore, because he was the backup last year. I'm not sure how many games he actually played in last year and how many over the the mark he got. But he's the reason that Dylan Gabriel's at Oklahoma right now. It's because or at Oregon, because Oklahoma decided to double down on Jackson Arnold and his potential for that offense. So we've not seen much of him, but we've seen enough to know that this is the next guy who's supposed to take Oklahoma to that next step. And we'll see if they truly are one of the more underrated teams. He's going to have wins against some pretty big teams in the SEC, including down the stretch could be Mizzou, Alabama, or LSU for them. And he gets his first crack at the Texas Longhorns this season in the Red River rivalry. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because that game never goes according to anybody's plan. Ever, ever, ever. It's never exactly what you think it's going to be. That one gets so upside down so fast and twisted, it's nuts. And number 1, Nico Amaliava at Tennessee. This is the face of the modern NIL quarterback. This guy got $8 million reportedly guaranteed. He's taken private jet flights. The entire collapse of the NCAA and their no-paying players can be built around this man right here. This 19-year-old, 6'6", 225-pound athlete, thoroughbred of a quarterback. If you saw him play in the bowl game last year against Iowa, he torched a good defense on the ground. He made plays in the air too. He is very, very talented. He will be the starter. I mean, look at this. Look at this mustache this guy's already got right there. That's a Magnum PI mustache right there. He is the whole thing. The Tennessee case that the injunction was filed on was about Nico Amaliava and how much money that collective was paying to get him to Tennessee. And this will be fun to watch. It's weird to me that I'm talking about a Manning and not at Tennessee or Ole Miss.
Very.
Yeah. But the flying Hawaiian here, Nico Amaliava, this is really going to be interesting at Tennessee and what he's going to do for an offense with Josh Heupel, which you know is wide open and fun, and anybody puts up numbers in it. Maybe not as much as Hendon Hooker or someone like that, but he's probably going to be the biggest number putter-upper of anyone. And he's just a redshirt freshman, didn't play until the bowl game last year, so the sky's the limit for Nico. That's going to do it for the top 5. We're wrapping it up right now.
All right. We have not brought up what happened over the weekend with former President Trump, but one local note in our Jeff Traylor's son, Jake, is a media member, was behind the podium, behind the grandstands when the shots went off. He apparently dove on another female reporter to save her just in case something was going to pierce through the grandstands. I talked to Jeff. He said, one day my son will be president of the United States. He said he is that good. He goes, that's also now why I'm so nice to you guys in the media, because Jake now is a part of the media.
Is he 35?
No, he's like 26.
Is he so nice to us guys in the media? No. I mean, he is to us, yeah, for sure. I can't speak to everybody because he's kind of grizzled in his own way.
Yeah, he's got his little Texas humor.
No, that's obviously a very strange weekend and just really weird in general, and just nothing but sympathy and just sadness for people who were harmed, killed, shot this weekend, injured. It's a scary deal, man, and had to pinch myself to feel like I was. Or am I seeing this straight? It felt like one of those like 9/11 type of moments. Like this is a difference before and after. That's what it felt like to me. There's been a couple of those. COVID was one of those. 9/11 was one of those. I know older people, JFK being assassinated was one of those. So,
Reagan.
Being attempted assassination of Reagan, just a weird weekend. Glad we're here to kind of hopefully help take everybody's minds off things for, 3 hours at a time and take our minds off things as well. So that's what we'll do, and God bless America.
All right. Thank you, Craig. Again, please hit and click the like and subscribe button if you haven't already for 365 Sports. Also, 365 Sports tonight at 10:30 on the local CW. For Garrett Ross, Emery Winter, Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway, Craig Smoke, and Paul Catalina, thanks to those of you in the chat room, text line, and those who watch or listen. And we don't see you, but we know you're there because we continue to grow. I'm David Smoke. Have a great night. This is 365 Sports.